Chapter 1228. Li Diyu was about to go crazy. He was a great sage powerhouse, but at this time, he was beaten by a pseudo-saint to the point that he couldn't even speak. This made him very angry, and the great humiliation constantly stimulated him. He was about to be suffocated by his anger. With his strength that reached the great sage realm, although his physical body was constantly being beaten up, he wouldn't die. As long as he had strength, he could still quickly reform his physical body. Although his soul was attacked, there was no fatal threat. Therefore, it was difficult for him to die. Do you admit defeat or not? You kept beating Li Diyu up with his stick and asked loudly at the same time. However, did he really not know that Li Diyu couldn't speak, or did he do it deliberately? Obviously, everyone could see that Yu did it deliberately. However, no one dared to stop Yu. Even the powerhouses of the Li family, who came after hearing the news, were the same. This was because the city lord of White Sun City, Fang Tianhe, was watching this scene in the dark. If they dared to break the fairness of the duel, who knew what kind of consequences their Li family would have to bear? Moreover, they could see that Li Diyu wasn't in danger of dying. In fact, Yu really wanted to beat Li Diyu to death with his stick. He had long found this guy unpleasant to the eye. Moreover, this bastard's mouth was very smelly. He kept saying, "Little bastard." However, Yu also knew that he couldn't kill Li Diyu. Otherwise, no one could protect him. He could only escape. He didn't want that to happen for the time being, because he needed a place to settle down. However, not killing didn't mean that he couldn't beat him up. Therefore, he directly beat up Li Diyu, beating him to the point that Li Diyu even had the thought of dying. I admit defeat. When Yu beat Li Diyu up again with his stick, Li Diyu's voice finally resounded in the arena. It wasn't a real voice, but a divine thought transmission. What a pity. Yu picked up the dragon bone flame needle and was about to smash it down, but Li Diyu had already shouted, "Li Diyu, I told you to admit defeat a long time ago. Why didn't you admit defeat? If you had admitted defeat earlier, you wouldn't be so miserable." Yu asked in a surprised voice. Li Diyu, who had just condensed his physical body, almost vomited blood when he heard this. Would he have a chance to speak? Moreover, he had been beaten up so badly that he had forgotten to directly send a voice transmission to Yu to admit defeat. This made him even more aggrieved. After giving Yu a vicious glare, Li Diyu turned around and was about to leave. The surrounding people were all staring at him with burning eyes. He really didn't have the face to continue staying here. When he saw this fellow turn around and leave, Yu's face darkened, and he could only kindly remind him. "Wait, Li Diyu, have you forgotten something?" "What did you forget? Isn't the challenge over?" Li Diyu looked at Yu with a puzzled expression. It was as if he really didn't know anything. Shameless. Mother of Asterisker, why is this bastard like this? It's really shameful to be ranked with him as one of the 4 great young masters. Seeing the shameless Li Diyu, Yuan Zhen, Wu Guangde, and Zhou Xiuzhu, who were also part of the 4 great young masters, couldn't help but feel embarrassed for Li Diyu. "Where's your prize?" "It's the high-grade sacred artifact, the 100 refined dim light mirror." Yu sneered. "Oh, look at me. I'm a little confused. I actually forgot about this," Li Diyu said as he threw the 100 refined dim light mirror directly to Yu. Everyone covered their eyes with their hands. They really couldn't stand it anymore. One couldn't be shameless to this extent. How could he forget? He clearly wanted to renege on the debt. If it weren't for so many people watching, if it weren't for Fang Tianhe secretly watching, Li Diyu would definitely renege on the debt. "Little bastard, protect the 100 refined dim light mirror for me. Soon, I will take it back. At that time, you will die." Li Diyu's expression was gloomy, and his voice was full of killing intent as he transmitted to Yu. Yu's expression changed slightly. Then he sneered, "I'm so scared. You are my defeated opponent. This is the truth, and you will never be my opponent." Li Diyu vomited blood. Today's defeat really made him feel humiliated. He even felt that Yu had now become his inner demon. He had to kill Yu. Only by killing Yu personally could he wash away the humiliation he suffered today. Seeing Li Diyu quickly rushing to White Sun City, Murong first smiled faintly, then shouted, Li Diyu, I know you are definitely not reconciled. If you want to find trouble with me, I will accompany you at any time. However, before you find trouble with me, please prepare the treasure. Otherwise, you can go back to where you came from. Puffed. When the voice reached Li Diyu's ears, Li Diyu finally couldn't hold it in and vomited a mouthful of blood. Then, he turned around and stared at Murong with incomparably resentful eyes, then quickly disappeared into the crowd. Trash! Murong sneered. The surrounding crowd had black lines on their faces. They felt that Murong was a little too arrogant. Wasn't the reason he defeated Li Diyu so quickly and didn't even give Li Diyu a chance to attack because he relied on the Dragon Bone Flaming Needle? If he didn't have this high-grade Saint artifact, how could he defeat the vicious and merciless Li Diyu? However, did Murong really only rely on the Dragon Bone Flaming Needle to defeat Li Diyu? Of course not. Although the Dragon Bone Flaming Needle was powerful, a 9th level Great Saint could only use it for 2 breaths of time. After 2 breaths of time, it would lose its power. With Murong strength, he could only use it for 1 breath at a time at most. The reason he defeated Li Diyu was because he used the power of his soul. However, he used the Dragon Bone Flaming Needle to cover it up. If Yuan Jun hadn't lost to him with his Saint artifact, he would probably have to rely on his speed to deal with Li Diyu. Murong, are you alright? Seeing Murong standing there without moving, Fong Ziwen couldn't help but walk up to him. Cough, cough. I'm fine. Do you have any more pills that can restore my strength? I've used up all my strength. Also, forcibly increasing my physical strength has damaged my body. Murong's face was pale as he coughed dryly. As he asked, he wiped away a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Murong was also seriously injured. The surrounding crowd couldn't help but nod. This was a normal situation. However, they didn't know that Murong wasn't injured at all. Everything was just an act. One had to keep a low profile. Otherwise, trouble would come to him at any time. Fong Ziwen was depressed. She could only take out the precious pills and give them to Murong. Murong immediately wolfed down the pills. As he healed, he looked at Fong Ziwen again. Do you have any pills that can heal the soul? When I used the Dragon Bone Flaming Needle, my soul seemed to have been injured. Fong Ziwen's face darkened. Of course there were such pills in the holy world. However, she didn't have them. Even Fong Tianhe might not have them. That was because those pills were simply too precious. Because very few people were able to refine that kind of pill. Therefore, she said with a darkened face, No, even if I did, I wouldn't give them to you. Murong was speechless. Young miss, I'm still your subordinate. You can't be so heartless, right? Fong Ziwen's face darkened even more. When did you become my subordinate? Don't talk nonsense. Otherwise, I'll tear your mouth apart. After a pause, she said worriedly, Your soul should be fine, right? Aren't I your guard? Of course I'm your subordinate. Murong smiled and stood up. I shouldn't die. Let's go back. Let's go back and refine these 2 Saint artifacts. Hee. Give it to me. Fong Ziwen extended her hand to Murong. Murong was stunned. He looked at Fong Ziwen in confusion. Give me one of the 2 sacred artifacts, Fong Ziwen said in a righteous manner. Murong's face darkened. He quickly put the 2 Saint artifacts into the Hichu Luo Shu. You're the young miss of the city lord's mansion. You have the nerve to fight over Saint artifacts with a commoner like me? Also, I'm curious. These are my spoils of war. Why should I give them to you? If I didn't use my Saint artifacts as collateral, they wouldn't have challenged you. If they didn't challenge you, you wouldn't have had the chance to get these 2 Saint artifacts. Also, I gave you so many precious pills. If it weren't for those pills, how could you have defeated Li Diyu? Therefore, one of these 2 Saint artifacts will belong to me. Murong was stunned by her words. In the end, he nodded repeatedly. You're right. However, I can't give you these 2 Saint artifacts. At most, I'll give you another Saint artifact when I have one. Before she could finish her sentence, Murong had already brushed past Fong Ziwen and strode toward the city gates. Seeing Murong's departing figure, Fong Ziwen couldn't help but gnash her teeth. This stinking brat is getting more and more outrageous. Is he my retainer, or am I his maidservant? This won't do. I must find a chance to teach him a lesson. I'll let him have a taste of my young Mrs. Power. Moronyu. On the way, Yuan Jun walked over and called out to Moronyu. Moronyu stopped and looked at Yuan Jun with a smile. Don't tell me you won the Dragonbone Flaming Needles back? There's no room for negotiation. Yuan Jun's face reddened. He really did have such intentions. However, he had no intention of snatching or threatening. He only wanted to exchange something of equal value. However, Moronyu had long since seen through his intentions and stopped him before he could say anything. You gave that bastard to you a good beating. That's really satisfying. However, that bastard is narrow-minded and vengeful. You need to be careful of his revenge, Yuan Jun reminded in a low voice. Moronyu smiled at Yuan Jun. If he comes, I'll just beat him up again. I'm just afraid he won't come. Brother Yuan, I'll go back and treat my injuries first. If there's a chance, I'll find you for a drink. With that, Moronyu turned and left. However, he wasn't rushing back to treat his injuries. Instead, he seemed to be on the verge of a breakthrough. Chapter 1229. After Moronyu returned to the city lord's mansion, he immediately entered Hichu Luoshu to cultivate. However, before entering Hichu Luoshu, he had already set up a series of formations in his residence. He didn't want anyone to barge in while he was breaking through. Fang Ziwen was a bit slower than Moronyu when she returned to the city lord's mansion. When she angrily arrived at Morongyu's residence, she was blocked by countless formations and restrictions. Stinking brat. Even if you don't want to give me the saint weapon, you don't have to do this, right? Fang Ziwen thought, gnashing her teeth. She didn't know that Moronyu wanted to cultivate, not refuse to interact with her. However, in the end, Fang Ziwen didn't force her way in. Instead, she went to the main hall of the city lord's mansion. Father, do you think Morongyu's soul has become a saint? Only Fang Ziwen, Fang Tianhe, and Fang Ziwen were in the main hall. Fang Tianhe didn't say anything. He only muttered to himself. After a long time, he slowly said, whether or not his soul has become a saint, he is no ordinary person. Once he matures, his achievements won't be low. From beginning to end, Fang Tianhe had been watching all of this. Because of the Dragonbone Flaming Needle, he didn't notice that Moronyu had used the power of his soul. However, Moronyu had used his physical body to defeat Yuan Jun, and then used the saint weapon in his hand to quickly defeat Li Diyu. Fang Tianhe had seen the terrifying explosive power contained in Morongyu's body, but he had remained calm. Father, is the power of that Dragonbone Flaming Needle really that terrifying? I suspect that Moronyu used his own soul power, Fang Ziwen said with a frown. Oh, why do you say that? Fang Tianhe looked at Fang Ziwen in surprise. Although his daughter wasn't very strong, she was meticulous and observant. She was practically his brain trust. According to Yuan Jun, even if a ninth-step great sage used all of his strength to activate the Dragonbone Flaming Needle, he could only unleash its power for 2 breaths of time. Moreover, its power was still unknown. Even if Moronyu goes all out, I'm afraid he won't be able to activate the Dragonbone Flame Needle. Fang Ziwen recalled the battle between Moronyu and Li Diyu and slowly explained. However, Fang Tianhe shook his head. You're wrong. Moronyu has indeed activated the might of the Dragonbone Flaming Needle, and it lasts for more than 2 breaths. Fang Ziwen's face was filled with astonishment. Father, are you sure? Moronyu is in the false saint realm. His power will be devoured in an instant. How can he activate the power of the upper sacred weapon? A cold glint flashed in Fang Tianhe's eyes. He was certain that Moronyu indeed had that kind of power. However, what puzzled him was why Moronyu, a fake saint, had such great power. Could it be that he's pretending to be a pig to eat the tiger? He wasn't a false saint, but an existence of a higher realm? When he thought of this, a cold killing intent flashed in Fang Tianhe's eyes. If that was the case, then Moronyu definitely got close to Fang Ziwen on purpose. As for what evil intentions? Humph. If that's the case, I'll make you regret stepping into White Sun City. Fong Tianhe sneered in his heart. Feeling the killing intent in Fong Tianhe's heart, Fong Ziwen was obviously shocked. Then she reacted. Father, you suspect that Muronyu got close to me on purpose? Fong Tianhe nodded and said with some hesitation, I've seen Muronyu. He's really in the false saint realm. If he really got close to you on purpose, then the person who sealed his realm is at least an undead realm expert, or he himself is an undead realm expert. However, our White Sun City is only a small city. It's not worth it for him to spend so much effort to sneak in. In fact, what Fong Tianhe wanted to say was that if Muronyu was an undead realm expert or had an undead realm expert behind him, then he could just kill his way in. There was no need for him to go through so much trouble to sneak in. I'll pay attention to him. Fong Ziwen frowned. On the other side, after Muronyu entered Hichu Luoshu, he sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate. His breakthrough was not a breakthrough in cultivation. He had broken through from the false saint realm to the saint realm. Instead, he was finally going to make a breakthrough in the chaotic celestial record. For a long time, Muronyu had created a power clone to sit near the holy grade blood crystal and comprehend the chaotic celestial record. Now, he was finally going to make a breakthrough. With a thought, Muronyu, who had just sat down, appeared near the holy grade blood crystal that was the size of a small mountain. The Holy Grade Bible's murderous aura was still extremely violent. Even now, he could not directly devour it. He could not even get close to it. His comprehension ability had greatly increased. Before long, Muronyu even felt that he was rapidly approaching the 7th level of the chaotic celestial record. After an unknown period of time, Muronyu, who had been cultivating with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. 2 beams of holy light flashed in his eyes. I've finally made a breakthrough. Muronyu could not help but let out a long cry. Then, with a thought, countless chaos saint veins broke through the air and flew toward him. He was prepared to forcibly refine and devour their power, to raise his cultivation to the saint realm. Muronyu did not know how much the 7th level of the chaotic celestial record could raise his cultivation by. However, he could at least raise his cultivation to the saint realm now. Only when one reached the saint realm could one be considered saint. Those below the saint realm could only be considered as false saints. Regardless of status or strength, they were far inferior to a real saint. He directly devoured the chaos saint veins. Under the impact of the chaos saint veins' immense power, Murongyu's strength rapidly increased at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few breaths' time, he had raised his cultivation by a small level. If his previous cultivation level was only at the false saint realm, after devouring the chaos saint veins for half a day, his cultivation level rose to the false saint realm. He had even reached the peak of the false saint realm. Not long after, Murongyu's body shook violently. He had finally succeeded in crossing the last step from the false saint realm to the saint realm. From the moment he broke through, he had finally become a true saint. From this moment on, his strength soared instantly, more than 100 times higher than the peak of the false saint realm. However, after he broke through to the true saint realm, his cultivation level had stagnated. This made Muronyu depressed. Do I have to continue making breakthroughs in the chaotic celestial record to raise my cultivation level to a higher level? However, at the same time, Muronyu felt that his inability to raise his cultivation level had nothing to do with the chaotic celestial record. He felt that after the chaotic celestial record broke through to the 7th level, he could at least raise his cultivation level to the true saint realm. But now, for some reason, his cultivation level had stagnated. This was because he was surprised to find that all the power he had devoured had poured into his dantian. Since condensing the Godhead, every time Muronyu devoured and absorbed power, the power would be absorbed by his 3 Godheads. When it flowed through the meridians in his body, it would only pass by and would not stop. After he became a true saint, his Godhead had also become a saint Godhead. The position was the same as before. However, the transformation of the saint Godhead could not be completed in a short time. Now, his three godheads were slowly undergoing the process of transforming from godhead to saint godhead. During this process, the three godheads had to absorb power. However, this had no effect on Murong Yu's cultivation level breakthrough. The power absorbed by his dantian did not enter any of the three saint godheads. Instead, it condensed in his dantian and continued to condense. What's going on? Am I going to form a fourth saint godhead? Murong Yu was a little confused. However, he did not stop absorbing power. Don't stop absorbing power. Make sure you have enough power. This is the transformation that happened after you reached the true saint realm, after the chaotic celestial record reached the 7th level. It is very important for you. While Murong Yu insisted, Hichu's solemn voice sounded in his ears. Transformation? Murong Yu was stunned, and he couldn't help but think of the transformation of his soul. He was pleasantly surprised. However, he became more careful, and more Chaos Saint bloodlines were pulled over to him. In fact, Murong Yu was prepared to return to the Chaos Secret Land if he did not have enough Chaos Saint bloodlines. Incomparably powerful energy poured into his dantian, condensing and compressing. This process lasted for a very long time. Finally, the quantitative change caused a qualitative change. The condensed and compressed energy started to take shape in Murong Yu's dantian, and it gradually formed the shape of a furnace. It's not a saint godhead. Murong Yu was stunned. At this time, the furnace formed by the condensed energy had turned from an illusory image to a real one. It was a four-legged, square, and black ancient cauldron with two handles. However, it was different from ordinary cauldrons. This cauldron was formed by condensed energy. Inside the cauldron, there were blazing chaos flames. When the cauldron materialized, it was suspended in Murong Yu's dantian. Then, Murong Yu saw the cauldron vibrate slightly, and in the next moment, he felt the countless chaos saint bloodlines around him being sucked into the cauldron and refined quickly. There is no need for Murong Yu to devour and refine it himself. What's going on? Murong Yu felt a little dizzy. A large amount of energy was being devoured and refined by the cauldron. With the replenishment of the energy, the cauldron became stronger and stronger. The cauldron is called the Chaos Cauldron, and it can melt everything. It's a transformation after the chaotic celestial body cultivates the record of the chaotic celestial body and reaches the saint realm. Hichu's voice sounded in Murong Yu's ears with a hint of surprise. However, Murong Yu heard Hichu's sigh of relief. What's the function of the Chaos Cauldron? Murong Yu quickly asked. Since it was a transformation, it must have an important function. Murong Yu felt that the appearance of the Chaos Cauldron would be of great benefit to his strength. It can refine everything, and after refining the energy of everything, it can be directly converted into your origin energy, directly increasing your strength and raising your cultivation realm. Hichu's voice was calm, but in Murong Yu's ears, it was like thunder in a clear sky. Chapter 1230. The Chaos Furnace could smelt everything and convert them into origin energy, directly increasing one's strength. This sentence was not difficult to understand. For example, if a person's strength was originally 1, then as long as a huge amount of energy was refined by the Chaos Furnace, this person's strength would increase to 2, 3, or even more. It depended on how much energy was in the refined item. Murong Yu was instantly shocked. With the existence of the Chaos Furnace, did it mean that as long as he refined an item with enough energy, his realm would continue to increase? Then what cultivation technique did he need to comprehend? Why did he need to cultivate? At this time, Murong Yu finally understood why Hichu had always wanted him to collect items that contained a huge amount of energy. It was probably because of the Chaos Furnace. Although the Chaos Furnace is heaven-defying, it will not allow you to increase your realm quickly. You still need to cultivate the chaotic celestial record, Hichu explained at this time. Murong Yu was immediately puzzled. Then isn't this Chaos Furnace useless? Even without the Chaos Furnace, as long as I comprehend the chaotic celestial record, I can still increase my cultivation realm. At this point, Murong Yu's excitement dissipated a lot because he felt that the benefits of the chaos furnace were extremely limited. In the Hichu Luo Shu, Hichu rolled his eyes and felt a little helpless about Murong Yu's short-sightedness. Therefore, he could only continue to explain. In the past, you could only refine elixirs, sacred meridians, and alike. Can you refine sacred artifacts, Dharma treasures, or even other heaven and earth treasures? Moreover, after those energies are refined and absorbed by you, you still need to refine and purify them yourself. In the end, there are not many of them that can really become your strength. But the chaos furnace can smelt everything, although there are some losses in the process. However, it would directly purify and increase one's strength. It's self-evident whether it's useful or not. After Hichu's explanation, Murong Yu also understood. The chaos furnace was still very beneficial to him. If you don't cultivate the chaotic celestial record, the chaos furnace can increase your realm faster, as long as there is enough energy to be refined. Hichu rolled his eyes. If you hadn't cultivated the chaos celestial body record, and if you weren't a chaos celestial body, you wouldn't have been able to form a chaos furnace. Murong Yu was embarrassed and immediately changed the topic. The surprise you mentioned is not just the chaos furnace, right? Although the chaos furnace is enough of a surprise. What other surprises do you want? After condensing the chaos furnace, you can also see the strength of any item, Hichu said as he rolled his eyes. However, no matter how Murong Yu asked, how was he supposed to judge the strength of his opponent? However, he did not say anything. He wanted Murong Yu to find out for himself. Murong Yu pondered for a moment before he prepared to leave Hichu Luo Shu. Should I first refine the Chaos Saint vein to raise my cultivation level, or should I explore this method that depends on strength? However, just as he was thinking about it, he suddenly paused. This was because he saw something he had never seen before. Because he had cultivated the Zai technique, he could directly see the aura left behind by every life in the void. The stronger one was the bigger and stronger the white light formed by the aura. Because of the heavenly punishment token, he could see whether every life was evil or good. Evil people were shrouded in black light, while good people were shrouded in white light. The higher the level, the stronger the light. However, at this time, Murong Yu saw more light in his eyes than before. It was different from the aura, the light left by good people, and the light left by evil people. The light he saw now was emitted from various items. The intensity and color of the light emitted by different items were different. For example, if Murong Yu was looking at a ball of fire, then the ball of fire in his eyes would emit a red light in addition to the light it emitted naturally. If it was water, it would emit a black light. Metal would emit a white light. Murong Yu immediately came to a realization. The reason why these items were emitting different colors was due to their different attributes. However, why were they emitting light? Why were there differences in the intensity of the light between different items? Could it be that the light represents the strength of the item itself? Murong Yu's heart skipped a beat. He immediately took out all the sacred weapons he had obtained, including the bow of heaven and earth and the yin-yang cauldron. Intense, but not dazzling light burst out from these same artifacts. Among them, the tempered dim light mirror's light was the weakest, followed by the dragonbone flame needle's light, and then the astral secret light bell's light. Among them, the bow of heaven and earth's light was the most intense, so much so that Murong Yu found it dazzling. However, although the bow of heaven and earth's light was strong, it was far inferior to the yin-yang cauldron's light. In Murong Yu's eyes, the yin-yang cauldron's light was far more dazzling than the sun in the sky, so much so that he didn't dare to look directly at it. It was definitely more powerful than a sacred weapon. Is it a supreme weapon or a ruler's weapon? Murong Yu thought to himself. He grabbed at the air and directly pulled Nuwa's sacred hall over. However, when he compared it, he became depressed. This was because he saw that although the light from Nuwa's sacred hall definitely surpassed that of a supreme grade sacred weapon, the astral wind bell, it was still far inferior to the bow of heaven and earth, let alone the yin-yang cauldron. Wasn't Nuwa supreme expert? Nua's sacred hall is a supreme weapon. How could it be so inferior to the bow of heaven and earth? Could it be that Nua's sacred hall is damaged? Murong Yu thought to himself. Or could it be that the Yin-Yang cauldron, a treasure born of chaos, is of a higher level than Nua's sacred hall? Murong Yu was a little nervous when he thought of this possibility. It seems that I need to use the Yin-Yang cauldron and Hichu Luoshu less in the future. If I'm discovered by those supreme or ruler's weapons, I won't be able to escape. After observing for a while, Murong Yu was certain that the light represented the strength of the items. This way, I won't miss out on treasures in the future. Murong Yu smiled, then appeared in the courtyard of the city lord's mansion. With a wave of his hand, he immediately removed the formations and restrictions. However, in the next moment, his face darkened. After he removed the formations and restrictions, he saw Fong Ziwen standing angrily at the entrance of the mansion. She was looking at the mansion with an unfriendly expression, as if she wanted to break the formations and restrictions by force. Young Miss Fong, we're honored by your presence. May I know what's the matter? If there's nothing else, I'm going to continue cultivating. Murong Yu walked out with a dark expression. The moment she saw Murong Yu, Fong Ziwen's face darkened. When she heard his words, her pretty face darkened even more, like charcoal. She didn't say anything and just walked straight in. However, after taking a few steps, she noticed a pair of eyes staring at her. As if sensing something, she looked over and happened to see Murong Yu staring at her in a daze, unable to take his eyes off her. Fong Ziwen was furious. How can you look at people like that? You're too rude. While she was angry, Fong Ziwen was also happy. This was because Murong Yu had never looked at her like this before. Women's thoughts were very strange. If a man stared at her blankly, she would feel very unhappy. However, if that man didn't even look at her, she would feel very unhappy. While Fong Ziwen was secretly delighted, thinking that Murong Yu was captivated by her beauty, she didn't know that Murong Yu wasn't attracted to her at all. Murong Yu was indeed stunned, but he only saw the light emitted from Fong Ziwen's body. The light emitted from Fong Ziwen's body was naturally inferior to that of a high-grade saint artifact. However, Murong Yu only thought that he could see the power of light from lifeless and sentient objects. He didn't think that he could see the strength of a person. As long as the other person was a cultivator, even if their cultivation was much higher than Murong Yu's, wouldn't he be able to see the strength of the other person's cultivation? I wonder if the power of light that can be seen after suppressing one's cultivation is the highest level of light or the power of suppressed cultivation. If it's the highest level of light, then no one will be able to pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger in front of me in the future. Murong Yu thought. His mind was no longer on Fong Ziwen. However, his eyes were still on Fong Ziwen. It was because of this that Fong Ziwen misunderstood. Murong Yu actually broke through? While Fong Ziwen was secretly delighted, she couldn't help but glance at Murong Yu, which immediately startled her. In just one day, Murong Yu had broken through. Murong Yu withdrew his gaze and smiled. I comprehended a bit from the battle with Yuan Jun and the others, so I broke through. Fong Ziwen rolled her eyes. You broke through just because you comprehended a bit? You broke through in just a few days? How lucky. She knew that countless people would never be able to take this step in their entire lives. Even with Fong Tian's various resources, it took her a long time to break through from the false saint realm to the sage realm. Moreover, she was a genius. Could it be that this stinking brat's talent is even greater than mine? It doesn't seem like it. Fong Ziwen muttered in her heart. Young Miss Fong, what do you want? Murong Yu asked. He didn't want to waste time. Come with me to the Blue Flame auction house. Fong Ziwen remembered her business and turned to leave. Murong Yu was puzzled. The Blue Flame auction house wasn't far. With Fong Ziwen's speed, it wouldn't take long for her to arrive. Why did she have to bring him along? Seeing Murong Yu still standing there without any intention of moving, Fong Ziwen couldn't help but become angry. Are you going or not? Seeing that Fong Ziwen was about to flip out, Murong Yu quickly followed. Now was not the time to have a falling out with Fong Ziwen. He was still thinking about the secret place in the city lord's mansion. Chapter 1231. It was still the same 4 guards, but these 4 guards were not like Murong Yu. They consciously followed behind Fong Zhuan. On the other hand, Murong Yu, the top-notch servant, didn't have the slightest bit of self-awareness as he walked alongside Fong Zhuan. And what made the 4 guards most oppressed was that Murong Yu's face was not in a good mood. As a guard, of course, he had to follow his master at all times. Even if he was doing something he liked to do, he had to immediately set off. But Murong Yu was not like this. This was a different fate. Oh! On the way, Murong Yu's figure suddenly stopped. His face flashed with a touch of doubt. What's wrong? Seeing Murong Yu's strange look, Fong Zhuan could not help but ask. Murong Yu's eyes slightly narrowed, but his huge spirit sense had already spread out. But he did not find anything. It's nothing. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Murong Yu first looked at Fong Zhuan's 4 guards. After seeing that they were not strange, he slowly said. Fong Zhuan rolled her eyes, turned her head, and continued to walk towards the blue flame auction. And Murong Yu also followed. Hichu, did you feel a trace of faintly discernible killing intent? Murong Yu walked while communicating with Hichu. Believe in yourself. Hichu did not comment. He just said so. Murong Yu secretly nodded in his heart. Then he became more careful. He believed that he really did feel a killing intent just now. At the same time, when Murong Yu stopped, in a building not far in front of Murong Yu, a black-clothed man's whole body was wrapped in a black robe. Only revealing his eyes, his heart flashed with a touch of surprise. This kid can actually feel my killing intent. The black-clothed man withdrew his gaze from Murong Yu. However, Murong Yu's keen senses really surprised him. One must know that although his strength was not very strong, he had definitely surpassed Murong Yu. This was because there was no one else other than Murong Yu who could sense his killing intent. Even Fong Zhuan's guards, who had reached the Great Sage realm, didn't find any clues. However, even if your senses are 10 times sharper, you won't be able to escape death today. The black-clothed man sneered, his killing intent overflowing. Could it really be an illusion? After walking for a while, Murong Yu did not feel any more killing intent. He couldn't help but hesitate. But a cold light flashed in Murong Yu's eyes. It was always right to be careful. Although he had only just ascended to the holy world and had not interacted with many people, the holy world was still filled with people. However, wasn't there the vengeful Liu? Although the White Sun City was a small city, it was many times larger than those super cities in the holy world. Murong Yu and the others didn't fly, so they couldn't avoid walking into some remote streets. At this time, they passed by the foot of a mountain. There were no buildings on either side, only some tall trees, which seemed a little gloomy. Suddenly, an extremely strong and terrifying killing intent appeared out of nowhere. Immediately, Murong Yu's heart was enveloped by an extremely strong aura of death. Chi! When Murong Yu's heart was enveloped by the terrifying killing intent, the clothes on his body instantly burst open. The terrifying murderous intent seeped into his body. Instantly, cracks appeared on his body. Pieces of flesh flew everywhere, and blood splattered. Under this terrifying killing intent, Murong Yu's physical strength actually began to collapse. And this was only the killing intent. It didn't even have the slightest bit of physical strength. This killing intent even penetrated Murong Yu's soul space, wanting to crush his soul. Assassin! Murong Yu immediately reacted. With a thought, he took out all kinds of magic treasures, which hovered around him. When he took out the Yin-Yang Cauldron and other magic treasures, a crack suddenly appeared in the void in front of him. A sword light appeared out of nowhere, as if it had crossed countless time and space from the ancient times. It carried a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth. It crossed time and space, and quickly strangled Murong Yu's head. Chi! When the sword light appeared, the violent sword Chi rippled in all directions, strangling everything. As soon as it appeared, the air around the sword light was compressed and exploded. The giant trees on the street were directly crushed into powder. Murong Yu's heart suddenly jumped. When he saw the sword light appear, The extremely strong aura of death in his heart suddenly increased by more than 1,000 times. Kill! Because Muronyu had long since noticed the abnormality, he immediately let out a roar the moment the sword ray appeared. The yin-yang cauldron and various other saint artifacts and treasures were pushed to their limits by him to meet the sword ray head-on. At the same time, the angelic wings appeared in an instant, flapping wildly. Suddenly, Muronyu turned into a stream of light and retreated rapidly. At this time, Fong Ziwen and the others didn't even have time to react. Boom! 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 The yin-yang cauldron burst out, a terrifying, chaotic fire that could burn everything. But it couldn't stop the sword light. After just one collision, the yin-yang cauldron was sent flying. Murongyu's mind was also injured in an instant. However, the sword light didn't stop at all, and it didn't lose any energy. After it sent the yin-yang cauldron flying, it still locked onto Murongyu and quickly strangled him. Murongyu's heart sank. Although he didn't see who had slashed out this sword light, he vaguely guessed the strength of the person who had slashed out this sword light. It was at least a great saint, or maybe even higher. The undead realm. Murongyu's speed was extremely fast, but the sword light was even faster. It was like a shadow attached to the body, like a gangrene attached to the bone. Even though Murongyu had retreated as fast as he could, the distance between him and the sword light was getting smaller and smaller. Moreover, the closer the sword light was, the more terrifying the power of the explosion was. At this time, Murongyu's body wasn't as simple as cracking, but began to be annihilated in large areas. Even the flesh and blood in front of him were annihilated to the point that even his internal organs could be seen. Even though the recovery ability of life force was extremely terrifying, it couldn't heal these wounds. One could imagine how terrifying the lethality of the sword light was. Murongyu's expression changed again and again. The strength of the person who attacked him was really too strong. He could only retreat quickly now, and he didn't even have the time to enter the Hichu Luoshu world. With the opponent's speed, even if he entered the Hichu Luoshu world, the sword light would follow him into the Hichu Luoshu world and eventually kill him directly. However, although Murongyu was shocked, he didn't panic. Even the dragon bone flaming needle, tempered dark light mirror, and other treasures didn't activate their power. They were still spinning in front of him as if to block the sword light's attack. How dare you? Protect the young miss. At this time, Fong Ziwen's 4 guards finally reacted. Amidst the loud roar, 2 of them directly protected Fong Ziwen behind them, while the other 2 unleashed their strongest attacks toward the sword light. As for Fong Ziwen, she was still a little stunned at this time. It seemed like she hadn't reacted yet. Scram! At the same time when the 2 Great Saint Stage guards made their move, a deep and somewhat sinister voice suddenly shouted. At the same time, the sword light trembled slightly, and 2 forces shot out. The 2 guards who made their move had a sudden change in expression. The forces that were shot out were about to attack the 2 forces that were shooting toward them. However, it was already too late. The 2 forces seemed to have directly crossed the obstruction of the void and directly bombarded their bodies. In an instant, the 2 great saints were sent flying, and they continuously spat out blood in the void. Bang! Bang! After 2 sounds, the 2 of them suddenly exploded in mid-air. There was no sign of life. Even their souls had been destroyed by the explosion. These were 2 high-level great saints. They didn't even have the ability to resist and were blasted to death. Seeing this scene, Murongyu and Fong Ziwen's 2 guards were shocked. In addition to being shocked, one of the 2 guards grabbed Fong Ziwen and then rushed toward the City Lord's mansion. The last guard also quickly flew toward the City Lord's mansion while protecting the 2 of them. They directly abandoned Murongyu. Of course, this was the most appropriate reaction. After all, their mission was to protect Fong Ziwen, not Murongyu. In the end, Murongyu was just a guard. Go save Murongyu. Fong Ziwen finally reacted at this time and screamed. In fact, it wasn't that Fong Ziwen's reaction was too slow, but that everything happened too quickly. From a moment the killing intent erupted to when Fong Ziwen was taken away by the guard. Only 2 seconds had passed. Damn it, am I really going to be doomed today? Muronyu felt a little irritated when he saw the sword light flying toward him at high speed. However, he still remained calm. What should I do? Hundreds of millions of thoughts flashed through Muronyu's mind, but none of them could help him escape. That was the sword light. It was just that the sword light's strength was too terrifying. His strength as a saint was simply too weak. It was like an ant trying to shake a tree. Didn't he see that the two great saints were directly strangled to death? After thinking about it, Muronyu felt that the most feasible way was to enter Hichu Luo Shu. However, that sword light would definitely follow him in. This was nothing. Muronyu was worried that the killer would follow him into Hichu Luo Shu. If that happened, Muronyu would definitely suffer tragedy. Soul Attack. Muronyu finally activated the refined dim light mirror and Dragonbone Flaming Needle's power. Suddenly, waves of soul power burst out and swept in all directions. However, Muronyu knew that it was futile, because that killer was simply nearby. If he didn't even know where the killer was, then no matter how powerful the soul attack was, it was useless. Damn it, old Lu, if you keep pretending to be dead, we'll all become real dead soon. Muronyu used Hichu Luo Shu to protect his body. The yin-yang cauldron flew back to protect him. At the same time, he constantly transmitted messages to kill Lu Haotsong, who was in seclusion. In fact, he had been bombarding Lu Haotsong constantly when he was attacked, but Lu Haotsong didn't wake up. Chapter 1232. Chi-Chi. Under the terrifying pressure of the sword light, Muronyu's entire body was rapidly melting. Even if he used Hichu Luo Shu to cover his whole body, even if his life force was invincible, he still couldn't restore his body. If this continued, even if the sword light didn't hit him, he would be killed by the pressure of the sword light. The gap in strength between the two sides was too big. The opponent was definitely an existence beyond the Great Sage. Even the strength of a 9th stage Great Sage wasn't so terrifying, because neither the Hichu Luo Shu nor the yin-yang cauldron had any effect. Although these super treasures couldn't block the attack of a Great Sage, it was absolutely no problem to resist it. What shocked Muronyu the most was that Feng Ziwen's Great Sage guards were directly killed. Lu Haotsong was in seclusion. No matter how Muronyu shouted, there was no response. It was impossible to rely on him. If he wanted to save his life, he could only rely on himself. He absolutely couldn't rely on others. Logically speaking, the City Lord of White Sun City would definitely take action. After all, Muronyu is also a member of the City Lord's mansion. There was no reason for her not to take action when she was attacked by an assassin. However, from the time Muronyu was attacked until now, only a few breaths had passed. When Feng Tianhe reacted, she was afraid that she could only collect Muronyu's corpse. Soul attacks were useless. Soul attacks could only be used on the opponent's soul. But now the opponent was not within the range of Muronyu's soul attack at all. Therefore, it was impossible for Muronyu to attack the opponent's soul to affect the opponent's attack. Then, I can only enter Hichu Luo Shu. Muronyu gritted his teeth and made up his mind. Although the opponent might also follow him in a Hichu Luo Shu, this was his only chance of survival. With a thought, the Hichu Luo Shu opened a hole just enough for Muronyu to enter. With a whoosh, Muronyu rushed into the Hichu and Luo Shu. Sure enough, although Muronyu had quickly turned the Hichu Luo Shu around and closed it when he entered. However, the sword light followed closely behind him like a shadow, rushing into the world of Hichu and Luo Shu. Chi. As soon as the sword light entered, the space of Hichu Luo Shu began to shatter quickly and be annihilated. Kill! Muronyu let out a roar, and his figure instantly disappeared. At the same time, the power of the entire Hichu and Luo Shu was mobilized by him, and it quickly strangled the sword light. It had to be said that this sword light was really terrifying. As the ruler of the Hichu and the Book of Luo Worlds, he was unable to destroy it even after using all of his powers. But here, Luo Shu World was Luo Shu World. Although he couldn't directly annihilate the sword light, he was quickly wearing it down. Not long after, the sword light was annihilated. At this point in time, Murong should have breathed a sigh of relief. After all, he'd already destroyed the sword ray. But Murong was getting more and more nervous. Because, not bad, there's actually such a treasure. Looks like my low price this time was worth it. Just after the sword light was annihilated, a somewhat sinister voice sounded in the Hichu Luo Shu. At the same time, a black-clothed man with only a pair of eyes appeared in front of Murong. Who are you? Why do you want to kill me? Murong looked at the black-clothed man with a dignified expression. The black-clothed man just sneered and looked around. He didn't answer. Murong's eyes flashed with a cold light. In fact, even if the black-clothed man didn't say it, he could guess. In the realm of the gods, the only one who had a grudge with him was Li Diyu. This guy wanted to get rid of him long ago. Moreover, he caused him to lose a high-grade sacred weapon in the end. It was normal for him to hire someone to deal with Murong. Of course, it couldn't be ruled out that other jealous people hired an assassin to kill Murong. After all, in the White Sun City, a high-grade sacred weapon was already a treasure of the clan. And Murong suddenly had two of them. Moreover, they were both soul attack sacred weapons. Soul attack sacred weapons were more precious than ordinary sacred weapons. It was at least 100 times more valuable. In fact, the value of Murong's bone dragon flaming needle and tempered dim light mirror were equivalent to ordinary top-grade sacred weapons. Therefore, countless people thought of the sacred weapons in his hands. However, this meant that Murong wouldn't be able to determine who had attacked him. Kill yourself. The black-clothed man looked coldly at Murong and said indifferently. Murong couldn't help but laugh. You're in my territory now, and you're still so confident? I have to admit that this spatial treasure of yours is beyond my expectations. However, you still have to die, and all of your treasures will change owners. Speaking of which, the black-clothed man couldn't help but laugh. It was as if he had already taken all of Murong's treasures for himself. Is that so? However, I have to admit that you're strong. You should be an undead realm powerhouse, right? You actually attacked me, a first-level saint. Is this my honor? Or is this your humiliation? You're strong, and I can't kill you. However, there are many people who can kill you. Murong's voice was originally calm. However, it suddenly became fierce as he spoke. At the same time, the black-clothed man's heart was suddenly enveloped by an extremely strong sense of danger. Immediately, he was shocked. His figure instantly retreated. At the same time, he saw a stream of light containing an extremely terrifying aura rushing towards him. An undead realm powerhouse? When he saw the aura, the black-clothed man couldn't help but cry out in shock. His voice was filled with fear, and his eyes were also full of fear. Retreat! Retreat! There was actually an undead realm powerhouse here. The black-clothed man was scared to death. He was strong, but he was only in the undead realm. He would be easily killed by an undead realm powerhouse. Therefore, all he could do was retreat continuously in an attempt to leave this place. Open! Seeing that the black-clothed man kept retreating, Murong roared in his heart. Suddenly, he silently opened the Hichu Luo Shu. However, the black-clothed man didn't notice and continued to retreat quickly. Then, with a swoosh, he rushed out of the Hichu Luo Shu. After the black-clothed man left, the Hichu Luo Shu quickly closed and disappeared. No, although the other party released the aura of an undead realm powerhouse. However, there wasn't any killing intent. Damn it, I was tricked. It wasn't until he left the Hichu Luo Shu that the black-clothed man reacted. With a roar in his heart, he suddenly slashed out fiercely at the location of Hichu and Luo Shu. However, Murong had already teleported away. Boom! After Murong left, the black-clothed man's attack didn't miss. It directly smashed a towering mountain into pieces. Countless buildings and sages in the vicinity were directly annihilated. For a moment, blood flowed like a river, and cries could be heard everywhere. Who started a massacre in my blood rain mountain? A roar came, But it made the black-clothed man's face change greatly. He was actually sent to the Blood Rain Mountain. He naturally knew about the Blood Rain Mountain. "Muronyu, you little bastard, I will kill you." The black-clothed man cursed. His figure flickered, and he shot out of the Blood Rain Mountain. The Blood Rain Mountain had ninth stage profound sages. How could an undead realm black-clothed man kill so many of their disciples? And why was there no response? It should be known that the black-clothed man was inside the Blood Rain Mountain. In the Blood Rain Mountain, there were people cultivating all the time, who knew that the black-clothed man's attack wasn't just for cultivation, but out of anger. Moreover, the various defensive formations of the Blood Rain Mountain only protected the outside and not the inside. If the black-clothed man attacked the Blood Rain Mountain from the outside, he wouldn't be able to shake the defensive formation of the Blood Rain Mountain. Therefore, the black-clothed man killed many disciples of the Blood Rain Mountain. The black-clothed man immediately wanted to escape, but in the Blood Rain Mountain, where experts were as numerous as clouds, how could he escape? His figure flickered, and he hadn't left yet. A monstrous hand had already pierced through the air, directly grabbing him who was about to escape. Then, with a fierce force, the black-clothed man, an undead realm expert, exploded, and his soul was also shattered. He was directly killed. "Muronyu, you little bastard." At the moment of death, the black-clothed man roared with all his strength, incomparably resentful. At this time, Muronyu had already left the Blood Rain Mountain and didn't hear the black-clothed man's roar. Ho! In the Hichu Luoshu world, Muronyu sat on the ground, gasping for breath. The scene just now was really too dangerous. The slightest wrong step would have consigned him to eternal damnation. Because he could see the strength of the black-clothed man, Muronyu had already confirmed that the other party was only in the undead realm when he saw him, because his strength was much weaker than Lu Haotsong. It was also after confirming the black-clothed man's realm that Muronyu came up with a plan. Wasn't Lu Haotsong in seclusion? Although he couldn't wake up, his body was emitting the aura of the undead realm. Moreover, he was still in the Hichu Luoshu world. Therefore, Muronyu directly used Lu Haotsong's whole body as a sacred weapon to attack the black-clothed man. Murongyu's purpose was only to scare the black-clothed man and scare him out of the Hichu Luoshu world. The black-clothed man was indeed tricked and was scared out of the Hichu Luoshu world. Moreover, at the same time that Murongyu was talking to him, the Hichu Luoshu world had already teleported to the Blood Rain Mountain, killing with a borrowed knife. Sure enough, his method didn't have any flaws, and he successfully killed the black-clothed man with the help of the Blood Rain Mountain. Of course, with Murongyu's character, he would kill the black-clothed man himself. But the difference in strength between him and the black-clothed man was too great. He didn't know how long it would take to kill him. Moreover, the black-clothed man knew too many of his secrets. Therefore, he definitely wouldn't allow the black-clothed man to continue living. However, his success was just a fluke, because if the black-clothed man had reacted earlier, as long as he slashed out with his sword, Murongyu and Lu Haotsong would be dead. However, luck was also a part of strength. Chapter 1233. He was lucky enough to save his life. Murongyu secretly exclaimed in his heart as he moved Lu Haotsong back to his original place of seclusion. After such a big movement, Lu Haotsong didn't wake up, which really surprised Murongyu. However, this was also a good thing. If Lu Haotsong woke up and discovered that he had been thrown out by Murongyu like a hidden weapon, would he be so angry that he would vomit blood and go mad? Without the interference of external forces, the life force once again displayed its terrifying power. It quickly restored Murongyu's body to its peak state. In the end, it's because I'm not strong enough. Murongyu stood up, his eyes flashing coldly. He had to start over from the beginning before he reached the next world, which made him very unhappy. However, this was also inevitable. After all, the higher the world, the stronger the strength. If Murongyu didn't have to start over, he could stay in the God Realm and be the master of the God Realm. But then, he couldn't be immortal. Furthermore, Climbing up from the bottom like this was a form of tempering for Murong Yu's temperament. It made his temperament even more tenacious and made him even stronger. Being too weak is my weakness. Today, I was lucky to escape with my life. What if I encounter this kind of thing again? Murong Yu muttered in his heart, preparing to quickly improve his realm. However, while improving his realm, he also needed to find out who attacked him. The sooner he knew the news, the better it would be for him. Therefore, he returned to the city lord's mansion first. However, when he entered the city lord's mansion, those who knew him looked at Murong Yu in surprise, as if they had seen a ghost. Murong Yu was very depressed. He didn't know what these people meant. In fact, it had been a few days since Murong Yu was assassinated. However, why did the people in the city lord's mansion know about this matter? Or was it because of Fong Ziwen? These days, because of Murong Yu's matter, Fong Ziwen was furious. Not only was Fong Ziwen angry, but even Fong Tianhe was furious. Fong Ziwen was furious because she believed that she had something to do with the assassination of Murong Yu. Moreover, she was unable to save Murong Yu at that time. As for Fong Tianhe, it was all because of Fong Ziwen. Someone actually tried to assassinate someone in White Sun City. Not only that, the target of the assassination was Fong Ziwen's guard. At that time, the situation was critical, and even Fong Ziwen was almost killed. How could this not infuriate Fong Tianhe? Therefore, during these few days, the city lord's mansion began to move out and began to investigate who the culprit was. Once he was found out, no matter who the other party was, he would probably end up in a miserable state. As for Murong Yu, no one thought that he would be able to survive in the hands of that powerful killer, an assassin of the undead realm. When Fong Tianhe found out, he was also shocked. Who could hire an assassin of the immortal realm to assassinate a false saint? At that time, Fong Tianhe didn't know that Murong Yu had broken through. Because they all thought that Murong Yu had been killed, the city lord's mansion's people were all surprised when they saw Murong Yu. Murong Yu didn't care about this and quickly returned to his house. He didn't take the initiative to find Fong Ziwen because he knew that she would come to find him soon. Sure enough, before Murong Yu could sit down, Fong Ziwen rushed in like a gust of wind and asked in a hurry, "Murong Yu, you didn't die?" Murong Yu's face darkened. What is she talking about? It was as if she wanted him to die. Therefore, he rolled his eyes and said, "Am I not alive here? How could I die? How much do you want me to die?" Fong Ziwen's pretty face reddened. Only then did she realize that her expression was somewhat incorrect. Therefore, she changed her way of saying, "I mean, how did you escape from that assassin? That was an immortal realm assassin." "I was just lucky." Murong Yu pretended to have a lingering fear and said the story he had thought over several times. That assassin's goal wasn't to kill me, but to capture me. After you left, I was captured by them. After that, he directly brought me out of White Sun City. No wonder when my father rushed over, he didn't find anything. So you've already left this place. Fong Ziwen interjected and continued to ask. Later, that assassin took me to a mountain range. It seemed that the assassin wasn't familiar with the terrain here and broke into the Blood Rain Mountain. Finally, he killed several disciples of the Blood Rain Mountain who had discovered us. Finally, the experts of the Blood Rain Mountain were attracted, and he was killed. While they were fighting, I snuck out. Then, I spent a few days to recover from my injuries and came back. You escaped and came back just like that? Fong Ziwen looked at Murong Yu doubtfully. Murong Yu laughed in his heart. How could the truth be like that? But what he said was almost flawless. After all, that assassin's whereabouts were mysterious, and he did break into the Blood Rain Mountain and was killed. As for the process, as long as he insists on this story, Fong Ziwen has to believe it even if she doesn't. Is that really so? Fong Ziwen was still somewhat doubtful. You can go to the Blood Rain Mountain and ask around. Murong Yu wasn't afraid of her doubts because the assassin was killed by the experts of the Blood Rain Mountain. But did you find out who wanted to kill me? Murong Yu's face became gloomy and his eyes flashed with cold, killing intent. That assassin may have been invited by the Li family or Li Diyu. But this person's whereabouts are mysterious, and we can't be sure. It's also possible that he was invited by other families to deal with you. The reason is because of the two high-grade saint artifacts on your body. At this point, Fong Ziwen looked at Murong with an unkind gaze. I told you to give me a saint artifact long ago. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been targeted and assassinated. What will come sooner or later. Anyone who dares to touch me will die. Murong sneered, and his killing intent filled the air. Fong Ziwen was shocked when she felt the terrifying killing intent from Murong body. But when she saw Murong realm, she sneered, Murong, with your realm, you won't be a match for any saint and will die. Murong face darkened. Haven't you noticed my heaven-defying aptitude? It won't be long before I can move unhindered in the holy world. Now, it was Fong Ziwen's turn to be angry. I'll wait for that day to come. When the time comes, don't forget that you still have me. Fong Ziwen, your former master. Murong was speechless. When did he recognize Fong Ziwen as his master? No one in his life was qualified to be his master. He was just looking for a place to settle down. Since you've returned safely, those who want your life won't let you go. Stay in the city lord's mansion for the next few days. She left after saying that. That was exactly what Murong wanted. After Fong Ziwen left, Murong quickly set up formations and restrictions and entered the Hichu Luo Shu. He wanted to increase his cultivation. A first step great saint was too weak. Chaos Furnace. Murong placed all the saint artifacts he could refine in front of him. However, he hesitated. Which one should he refine first? He could only refine 3 at the moment. The Dragonbone Flame Needle, the 100 refined dim light mirror, and the so-called top-grade saint artifact. As for the others, such as the Bow of Cosmos and the Yin-Yang Cauldron, Murong would never refine them unless his head was squashed by a door. The gains wouldn't make up for the losses. The 100 refined dim light mirror and the Dragonbone Flame Needle were both soul attack saint artifacts. It was obvious that the Dragonbone Flame Needle was much stronger than the 100 refined dim light mirror. As for the legendary top-grade saint artifact that even the Blue Flame Auction House couldn't unseal, I'll take this one. Murong decided. If even the Blue Flame Auction House couldn't unseal it, then it wouldn't be of much use to him. By the time he could unseal it, this top-grade saint artifact would be useless to him. Wait a moment. You can't refine this saint artifact right now. However, just as he was about to refine it, he was stopped by the river diagram. Why? Murong was confused. Was this really a top-grade saint artifact, or even a saint-grade saint artifact? It's too powerful. If your cultivation level rises too high, it won't do you any good, Hichu explained. If it rose a few realms at once, Murong's foundation would be unstable. This was actually a small problem. The scariest thing was that it might cause Murong to have the mentality of only wanting to reach a higher cultivation level, and he wouldn't be able to cultivate in peace in the future. It was better to raise one's cultivation level step by step. Murong thought about it and understood. Hence, he threw away the top-grade saint artifact and aimed at the 100 refined dim light mirror. Chaos Furnace. Murong's heart moved, and the Chaos Furnace in his dantian trembled. Then, the 100 refined dim light mirror was sucked in. In the next moment, Murong's heart moved, and the Chaos Furnace only shook slightly. In the next moment, Murong saw that the 100 refined dim light mirror was annihilated and turned into the most primitive power. Then, this power began to tumble within the Chaos Furnace. It was constantly being refined and purified by the Chaos Furnace. In just a few breaths, the power was purified. More than 50% of the power was consumed. After the power was purified, the power rushed out of the Chaos Furnace like a flood and went straight into Murong's meridians. At this moment, Murong saw that his power and cultivation level were increasing rapidly. This doesn't just increase the amount of power, but it also has the effect of empowerment. Murong was shocked when he tried the Chaos Furnace for the first time. The so-called empowerment was when an expert transferred all his power and cultivation level to another person, directly increasing the other person's cultivation level and power. The Chaos Furnace had such an effect. Chapter 1234. First Order True Saint, Second Order True Saint, Third Order True Saint. With the help of the Chaos Furnace, Murong-Yu's cultivation rose rapidly. In the end, he reached the Fifth Order True Saint realm. After that, his cultivation level stopped increasing. It wasn't because of the chaotic celestial record. When the chaotic celestial record broke through to the 7th level, it became much easier for Murong-Yu to comprehend it. At the very least, he could break through to the 9th Order True Saint realm without any problems. This was because the energy of the high-grade Saint artifact, the 100 refined dim light mirror, had been exhausted. A high-grade Saint artifact that was comparable to a supreme-grade Saint artifact was refined by Murong-Yu just like that. Moreover, it only raised Murong-Yu's cultivation by 4 small realms. If others knew about this, would they gang up on Murong-Yu and beat him up? Probably because it was too wasteful. At this time, Murong-Yu was also depressed. A high-grade Saint artifact only allowed me to break through by 4 small realms. Where am I going to find enough Saint artifacts to raise my cultivation? Murong-Yu was extremely depressed in his heart. At this time, Hichu spoke. The 100 refined dim light mirror is only a trash among high-grade Saint artifacts. It doesn't contain much energy. It's already beyond my expectations that it can raise your cultivation by 4 small realms. It seems like I have to look for more Saint artifacts and other items that contain a lot of energy in the future. Murong-Yu thought in his heart. After trying this method to raise his cultivation quickly, it was impossible for him to slowly absorb the energy of heaven and earth to raise his cultivation. Didn't Murong-Yu have a lot of chaos Saint veins? Couldn't he enter the Chaos Secret Land? Couldn't he just enter the Chaos Secret Land to cultivate or collect more Saint veins to refine? That was not feasible. First of all, it was true that Murong-Yu could enter the Chaos Secret Land, but could he move around freely in there? Moreover, with his strength in the true Saint realm, it was difficult for him to collect low-grade Saint veins. The Saint veins in his hands weren't very high-grade, and they were collected for him by Lu Haotsong. He definitely couldn't use them to raise his cultivation. This was because these sacred veins were used in emergencies. In the midst of battle, he could quickly replenish his strength and burn his Saint bloodline to accelerate time. There are no sacred artifacts, but there are other items. Murong-Yu once again entered the state of cultivation and began to refine the sacred nucleus and even the corpses of the demon beasts and vicious beasts. These things also contained sufficient power. However, the amount of power that Murong-Yu needed to raise his realm was simply too great. Even if he refined everything that he could, his cultivation level would only rise to the 7th Order Saint realm. Only after reaching this level did he truly run out of ammunition and provisions. After spending some time to consolidate his cultivation, Murong-Yu finally left the Hichu Luoshu. In the following time, Murong-Yu stayed in the City Lord's mansion and did not leave. However, the investigation had reached a stalemate. Because the assassin had already been killed, Murong-Yu couldn't even find out who had ordered him to be killed. This also caused Murong-Yu to continue to be in danger. However, Murong-Yu had already reached the 7th Order Great Saint realm, and in addition to his soul sanctification, ordinary great saints were no match for him. On this day, Murong-Yu directly left the City Lord's mansion and entered the White Sun Mountain range. To him, there was nothing more important than raising his cultivation realm. Although no one dared to touch him in the City Lord's mansion, his strength could not be raised. Moreover, there was no movement from the secret realm. Therefore, he wanted to go to the White Sun Mountain range to hunt some demon beasts and vicious beasts to raise his strength. When he was in the False Saint realm, Murong-Yu could already kill low-level demon beasts and vicious beasts. At this time, Murong-Yu's strength was only 100 times stronger than before. Therefore, he directly killed his way into the White Sun Mountain range and quickly walked into the depths. At this time, the ability to see the light of power was fully displayed. Looking around, the entire White Sun Mountain range was filled with different levels of power. As long as his eyesight could reach, the power of any life or even object was directly reflected in his eyes. This was more useful than divine sense. After all, Although Murong Yu's divine sense could cover a much larger area than his eyesight, it was easy to detect. However, divine sense was very easy to detect. Once it encountered a powerful opponent, it was sometimes impossible to detect it. As for those who hid their cultivation realm, divine sense could not see through them. However, everything could not hide under his gaze. Because of this, Murong was able to easily avoid the powerful demonic beasts and savage beasts and focus on finding his own targets. As he gradually went deeper, Murong began to encounter some third-order great saints. Now, there was a third-order great saint in front of him, Sharp Fire Note Wolf. Unlike the wolves that usually lived in packs, the fiery note wolf was even more ferocious and dangerous than the average wolf. This was because, in addition to ordinary attacks, the Sharp Fire Note Wolf had two offensive methods that made people pale at the mention of wolves. As the name suggested, they were Sharp Fire and Note Wolf. The so-called Sharp Fire was an extremely sharp horn on its head. In addition to being able to attack like a saint weapon, it could also spit out terrifying flames. If a saint of the same realm was hit by its flames, their saint body would be annihilated immediately, and even their soul would be burned. This was only one of the two ultimate skills of the Sharp Fire Note Wolf. Its most terrifying ultimate skill was its sound wave attack. This was because this sound wave attack targeted the soul. If an ordinary person encountered the Sharp Fire Note Wolf, they would have fled as far as they could. However, when Murong encountered the Sharp Fire Note Wolf, a look of joy appeared on his face. This was because he had previously killed a saint-level Sharp Fire musical Note Wolf. When he refined the Sharp Fire Note Wolf's corpse and saint core, he was pleasantly surprised to find that his soul had strengthened a little. It could increase the strength of his soul. Kill! Murong roared as he stomped the ground beneath his feet. At the same time, he turned into a streak of light, smashing through the void as he rapidly pounced towards the Sharp Fire musical symbol wolf. Roar! The moment Murong made his move, the Sharp Fire Note Wolf also made its move. It stomped on the ground and howled towards the sky. The deep and loud howl was like water ripples that spread in all directions. Most of the sound wave attack rushed towards Murong. After howling, the horn on the Sharp Fire Note Wolf's head flashed, and a fist-sized flame followed closely behind the sound wave and blasted towards Murong. Although it was only a small ball of flame, once it hit, it was enough to destroy half of Murong saint body. After spitting out the flame, the Sharp Fire Note Wolf used the force to soar into the air and pounced towards Murong. This kind of demonic beast attack method was the same. First, it would destroy the opponent's soul. If it didn't die, they would use the flame to completely destroy the opponent. The third step would be to pounce and devour the enemy's body. How's the soul attack of a third-stage Great Saint Sharp Fire Note Wolf? Murong was not afraid of the opponent's soul attack. Instead of retreating, he suddenly accelerated and pounced towards the Sharp Fire Note Wolf. Boom! The power of the soul was unstoppable. In an instant, it rushed into Murong's soul space and quickly strangled his soul. At this moment, Murong's soul shook violently. Streaks of soul flame of primal chaos burned crazily and rushed towards the Sharp Fire Note Wolf's soul attack. The soul attack and the soul flame of primal chaos clashed silently and annihilated each other. One had to admit that Murong's soul flame of primal chaos was very terrifying. It could even annihilate the soul attack of a third-stage Great Saint demonic beast. However, the gap between the two sides was too big, especially when Murong's soul was only in the Great Saint realm. Even though the soul flame of primal chaos was incomparably powerful, it was almost bombarded by the opponent's soul attack. In the end, it was completely annihilated when it was very close to the soul. After annihilating the opponent's soul attack, Murong took a step in the void and directly dodged the flames of the Sharp Fire Note Wolf. Then, he teleported and appeared above the Sharp Fire Note Wolf. 1,000 armies' elephant-pulling fist ruthlessly bombarded it. Taste my soul attack! Murong roared in his heart. The soul flame of primal chaos blasted out with his fist and directly rushed into the opponent's soul, strangling it. Suddenly, the sharp fire note wolf's head that was caught unprepared was directly hit by Murong Yu's fist. The berserk power exploded, directly blowing up the head of the sharp fire, musical note wolf. Asterisk plop. Asterisk the sharp fire note wolf's corpse fell to the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. The sharp fire note wolf was killed just like that. At this moment, in a dense forest not far from Murong Yu, a group of people watched this scene with their mouths agape. Young master, do we still have to make a move? This kid seems a little strange. A first-level saint can actually kill a third-level great saint demon beast. A person whispered to his so-called young master. If Murong Yu was here, he would definitely recognize this young master's identity. Li Diyu. He must have activated the power of the dragon bone, flaming needle, and tempered dim light mirror to kill the sharp fire note wolf soul first. Although the sharp fire note wolf soul attack is incomparably terrifying, its soul is also fragile. Li Diyu said in a low voice with a gloomy face, his eyes bursting with fierce killing intent. Because those sacred weapons should have been his. Do it, kill him. Be careful, don't expose your identity, Li Diyu said in a low voice. His figure flashed and rushed out, directly attacking Murong Yu. Behind Li Diyu were 7 or 8 experts from the Li family. However, at this moment, they were all covered in black clothes, only revealing their eyes. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk Murong Yu had just killed the sharp fire note wolf with a punch, but countless terrifying forces had already descended from the sky, enveloping the heaven and earth, locking onto him and strangling him. At this moment, Murong Yu's heart was suddenly enveloped by an extremely strong aura of death. Chapter 1235. 9 terrifying energies descended from the sky and locked onto Murong Yu, shattering everything in their path as they rained down on him like a violent storm. The air around Murong Yu exploded. The giant trees and even the mountain peaks around him were all blown apart by this terrifying power. An intense aura of death instantly enveloped Murong Yu's mind. Murong Yu immediately reacted. He unfurled his angel wings and made a grabbing motion in the air, sucking the fire note wolf into his hand. At the same time, Murong Yu's entire body was already flying in that direction. The reason he didn't teleport was because the forces had already caused the surrounding space to become chaotic. If he teleported, he might rush into the turbulent space. Seeing Murong Yu still not forget to take the wolf's corpse before fleeing, Li Diyu couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Little bastard, you really don't know how to spell the word death. During this process, Murong Yu's expression changed again and again. He hastily glanced at these people and found that their radiance was extremely strong, similar to Feng Ziwen's guards. In other words, including Li Diyu, these 9 people were all high-level great saints. What was a high-level great saint? The great saint realm was divided into 9 minor realms. The first 3 minor realms were considered low-level, while the 4th, 5th, and 6th minor realms were considered mid-level. As for high-level great saints, they were naturally the 7th, 8th, and 9th minor realms. It was obvious that the highest level among Li Diyu's group was a 7th level great saint. Their strength was beyond Murong Yu's imagination. In fact, if it were only 1 or 2 high-level great saints, Murong Yu wouldn't be afraid at all. Although he might not be able to kill them, escaping unscathed would be no problem. However, there were as many as 9 of them. Furthermore, they'd launched a sneak attack right from the start, surrounding Murong Yu. This instantly plunged Murong Yu into an endless crisis. The Yin-Yang Cauldron. As Murong Yu fled into the distance, he brought out the Yin-Yang Cauldron. The Yin-Yang Cauldron expanded with the wind and instantly turned into the size of a small mountain. An endless amount of flame of primordial chaos burst out. Wherever the flame of primordial chaos passed, even the void was burned until it sizzled. Although Li Diyu and the others were powerful, they could not withstand the bombardment of the flame of primal chaos. However, due to Murong Yu's strength, the flame of primal chaos was also limited. After burning a part of the power of Li Diyu and the others still broke through the air and blasted on the yin-yang cauldron. Clang! With a loud sound, the yin-yang cauldron was sent flying. Murong Yu's mind felt as if it had been struck by a giant hammer, and he almost fainted from the shock. Chi! At the same time that the yin-yang cauldron was sent flying, the three golden lights made a sharp sound and disappeared into the void. At this moment, the hearts of the three men in black suddenly tightened, and an extremely strong sense of danger shrouded their hearts. At the same time, they clearly saw a golden light break through the void and shoot toward them. The three of them were shocked. They clenched their hands into fists and were about to attack the golden light that made them feel threatened. However, before their fists could strike, they saw a layer of strange ripples in the void. At the same time that the ripples passed by them, an inexplicable power passed through their bodies and surged into their souls. Before they could react, it had already bombarded their souls. Suddenly, their souls felt as if they were being crazily torn apart. The tearing pain made them scream involuntarily. Some of them even realized that their souls were rapidly being ground into dust. In the blink of an eye, their souls were damaged. Soul attack! At this moment, Li Diyu and the others understood. Therefore, they retreated quickly. However, even though they'd retreated, their power hadn't been affected in the slightest. They continued to attack Murong Yu. In fact, as they retreated, they even attacked Murong Yu crazily with their palms. Soul attack! Soul attack! Murong Yu crazily activated the Dragon Bone Flaming Needle. Flames erupted from the Dragon Bone Flaming Needle, and the soul attack crazily shot in all directions. Just as Li Diyu and the others thought that this was only the Dragon Bone Flaming Needle soul attack, Murong Yu's soul power had already seeped out of his body and turned into a needle and thread that shot toward Li Diyu. Although Li Diyu's entire body was covered in black clothes, Murong Yu was able to recognize his identity with a single glance. Therefore, Murong Yu's desire to kill this person who tried to kill him time and time again had been thoroughly aroused. Today he would kill Li Diyu. Whoosh! At the same time as the soul attack, the Hichu Luoshu slowly rose and quickly expanded. In the end, it was like a sky curtain that floated above Murong Yu's head, blocking everyone's attacks. Boom! 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 Waves of terrifying power constantly bombarded the Hichu Luoshu. Although part of the power was successfully dissipated by the Hichu Luoshu, most of the power actually hit him. Suddenly, the overflowing damage was directly transferred to Murong Yu's body. Puff! 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 Bloody holes began to appear on Murong Yu's holy body. Blood spurted out like a fountain. These physical injuries were not a threat to Murong Yu. The most terrifying thing was his mind. Under the bombardment of these powers, the overflowing damage almost shattered his mind. He was instantly injured. In the end, Murong Yu could only open the Hichu Luoshu and put a part of the power directly into the Hichu Luoshu. Under Murong Yu's control, the power that entered the Hichu Luoshu was quickly annihilated. After all, the strength of a high-level great sage could not exceed the limit of Murong Yu's endurance. Of course, if it was the undead realm, like the previous assassin, the power that rushed into the Hichu Luoshu would immediately shatter the Hichu Luoshu's void. With a whoosh, the power to destroy heaven and earth disappeared in an instant. Seeing this scene, Li Diyu and others were shocked to see the Hichu Luoshu suspended above Murong Yu's head like a picture scroll. What a treasure! It can actually devour energy? Li Diyu's eyes were filled with greed as he looked at the Hichu and the Luoshu. Kill him and take the treasure. Then even the undead realm experts will not be my opponent in the future. Li Diyu's heart was extremely greedy. However, his voice came to an abrupt stop. What replaced it was a scream that resounded through the jungle. Because just now, Murong Yu's soul attack had rushed into his soul space and directly damaged his soul. At this time, 1/3 of Li Diyu's soul had been annihilated by Murong Yu. and Murong Yu's soul attack was still rushing into Li Diyu's soul like a torrent. Li Diyu retreated quickly. He knew that he could not stop Murong Yu's soul attack now. If he did not want to be attacked, then he could only pull away enough souls. As long as he reached a place where the soul attack could not affect, Murong Yu could not continue to attack him. Kill him for me. While Li Diyu was retreating, he saw Murong Yu chasing after him like a maggot attached to his bones. Li Diyu was immediately frightened to death. The 8 high-level quasi-saint immediately pounced on Murong Yu. Get lost! Murong Yu roared, no longer caring about hiding the fact that his soul had become a saint. With a roar, the soul flame of primal chaos rushed out of his forehead and swept in all directions. The 8 high-level guards did not know what was going on, but the soul flame of primal chaos had already burned their souls. Seeing that their souls were quickly being annihilated, these supreme saints immediately retreated. As they retreated, Murong Yu had already taken a step forward. His figure flashed, and he disappeared from where he stood. Teleportation. The moment he saw Murong Yu disappear, Li Diyu had a bad feeling in his heart. Sure enough, in less than a moment, Murong Yu appeared in Li Diyu's sight again. Boom! Li Diyu, who was suffering from the soul attack, did not even have time to react. His head was quickly bombarded by Murong Yu's fist. Although Li Diyu was a supreme saint, he was protecting his soul with all his strength. He did not have any extra strength to protect his head. Moreover, his head was only an ordinary saint body. Without the protection of power, it could not withstand Murong Yu's full blow. After a bang, half of Li Diyu's head was blown up by Murong Yu's fist. This was because Li Diyu finally reacted and hurriedly used his power to protect half of his head. He only had time to protect half of his head. Kill! Murong Yu roared and attacked again. This was a soul attack and a physical attack at the same time. Your soul has become a saint. Li Diyu was shocked. At this time, he found that the dragon bone flame needle was still far away, but the soul attack was coming wave after wave. You know it too late. Murong Yu once again rushed in front of Li Diyu with a teleport. He was extremely violent and attacked crazily. Want to kill me? This is impossible. Li Diyu roared again and again. His figure suddenly accelerated and flew to the other side. Whoosh! Just as he retreated, Hichu Luoshu quickly shrouded him with lightning speed. It was as if Li Diyu had rushed in himself. After Li Diyu was taken into Hichu Luoshu, Murong Yu's figure flashed and disappeared from the spot. He entered Hichu Luoshu. I have already said that you are not my opponent. Today is the day you die. After Murong Yu entered Hichu Luoshu, he roared and took a step forward. He came directly to Li Diyu's side. Then he used Invincible Divine Fist and punched Li Diyu fiercely. He wanted to kill Li Diyu with one blow. Chapter 1236. Seeing Murong Yu charging at him, Li Diyu sneered in his heart. Although Murong Yu's soul had reached the sage level, it was only his soul that was powerful. As long as there was a certain distance between them, Murong Yu would not be able to do anything to him. On the contrary, Murong Yu's soul attack had no effect on him, but his attack could kill Murong Yu. Therefore, with a thought, he retreated, wanting to increase the distance between him and Murong Yu. However, Murong Yu's speed was extremely fast. As he retreated, Murong Yu landed a heavy blow on his head. After a bang, Li Diyu's head was blown apart. Moreover, even though he had used all his power to protect his head, he could not protect it. Instantly, Li Diyu was dumbfounded. How did Murong Yu suddenly become so powerful? However, before he could figure it out, he felt his entire body being suppressed by an irresistible force. He was suppressed to the point that he could not move, and he could not even use his power. It turned out that it was not Murong Yu who had become stronger, but he had become weaker. Li Diyu had never thought that Murong Yu was the ruler in Hichu Luoshu. Therefore, he wanted to fight back. However, something that made him even more depressed happened. Murong Yu was clearly standing in front of him, but when he threw a punch, It was as if they were separated by billions of time and space. His power could not reach Morongyu. However, Morongyu's punch directly destroyed his physical body. Here, I am the ruler, and I control all living things. Morongyu coldly snorted. After Li Diyu reformed his body, Morongyu took a step forward and stomped Li Diyu to the ground. Li Diyu was instantly enraged. Endless humiliation shrouded his entire body, almost causing his physical body to explode. As one of the 4 great young masters of White Sun City, his status was high and mighty since the moment he was born. He was the only one who could step on others, and no one dared to step on him. This was the first time in his life. "Little bastard, I'm going to kill you." Li Diyu was incomparably furious and struggled frantically. However, Morongyu's huge foot was like a sacred mountain pressing down on his body, causing him to be unable to move. Slap! Hearing Li Diyu's profanity, a cold glint flashed through Morongyu's eyes. He immediately slapped Li Diyu. The huge force directly shattered half of Li Diyu's face. Li Diyu was even more furious. His injuries were nothing. However, being slapped in the face was a matter of dignity. It was the same as being stepped on. It made him feel incomparably humiliated. "Little bastard." Li Diyu continued to curse at Morongyu, causing Morongyu to be filled with murderous intent. "If you dare to say another word, I'll destroy your soul." Morongyu was finally enraged and said with murderous intent. Immediately, Li Diyu fell silent. However, his eyes were even more venomous than the most venomous snake in the world as he glared at Morongyu, as if he wanted to kill Morongyu with his gaze. "Little bastard, do you know who I am? You better let me go immediately, or the Li family will never let you go. If you kill me, there will be no place for you in White Sun City, or even in the entire Saints world." Li Diyu threatened Morongyu with his teeth clenched. Hearing Li Diyu's words, Morongyu could not help but laugh. "Li Diyu, you think too highly of your Li family, don't you? The Li family is only one of the 4 great families in a remote city. The strongest among you is only in the undead realm, right? I have to admit that your Li family can make me have no place near White Sun City, but in the Saints world? He." Morongyu sneered with a look of disdain. Li Diyu also sneered and looked at Morongyu with disdain. "A frog at the bottom of a well will always be a frog at the bottom of a well. Our Li family may not be much, but my big brother will never let you go. Do you know how strong my big brother is? He is at least a super existence of the profound sage realm. Furthermore, he has my soul jade slip on him. Normally, when I'm killed, he'll be the first to know." Morongyu just sneered again and again. Not to mention a profound sage. Even an ancient sage would not be able to stop him from killing Li Diyu. He immediately sneered and said, "It's not impossible to let you go. Did you invite the assassin to deal with me before?" "What assassin?" Li Diyu was stunned, not knowing what was going on. However, he quickly reacted. "You mean the assassin who tried to assassinate you before? Haha, if I, Li Diyu, want to kill you, do I need to waste money to hire an assassin?" Morongyu's face was somewhat gloomy, because he already knew that the assassin was not invited by Li Diyu. In this way, it would be even more difficult to find out who hired the assassin. "Little bastard, quickly let me go." Li Diyu angrily shouted again. Morongyu's eyebrows flashed with cold, killing intent, and he said in a gloomy voice, "Do you really think I will let you go and let you take revenge?" Li Diyu was startled and was about to fly into a rage. But at this moment, a torrent-like soul attack directly acted on his soul. Suddenly, Li Diyu's soul was torn into millions of pieces like a piece of cloth, and then completely annihilated. He was thoroughly dead. At the same time Li Diyu died, his soul jade slips also shattered. Most of them were in White Sun City, but there was one soul jade slip that was far away in the Saints world. That should be the big brother that Li Diyu mentioned. However, this had nothing to do with Morongyu. Not to mention a profound sage. Even if it was a Saint King or an ancestor sage, he would still kill him. There was no time to see what good things Li Diyu had left for him. After Morongyu burned Li Diyu's corpse, he stepped out of the Hichu Luo Shu. But this time, he appeared in the void in a concealed state. Therefore, after he appeared, Li Diyu's guard was still in a daze and didn't react. Although Murong Yu had tortured Li Diyu for most of the day in the Hichu Luo Shu, it was under the acceleration of time. Only a moment had passed in the saint's world. These 8 people must die. Murong Yu's eyes burst with killing intent. The Li family probably already knew about Li Diyu's death. As long as these people returned, the Li family would know that it was Murong Yu who killed Li Diyu. Only by killing these people, the Li family wouldn't know that Li Diyu was killed by Murong Yu. Even if they guessed, they wouldn't dare to directly attack Murong Yu. Whoosh! At this time, Murong Yu had already arrived behind one of the guards and secretly sacrificed the Hichu Luo Shu. Then, before the guard could react, he put him into the Hichu Luo Shu. After putting away this person, Murong Yu disappeared at the same time. Then he directly killed this great sage in the Hichu Luo Shu. Whoosh! 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 Murong Yu's movements were extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he'd sucked in a guard. Therefore, when 5 of these people were taken away, the remaining 3 guards finally reacted. Run. They didn't know what was going on, but they knew that if they were still here, they would definitely die. Therefore, the 3 of them immediately flew in different directions. Soul attack. Murong Yu roared in his heart, and the endless soul chaos fire was divided into 3 torrents, breaking the void and bombarding the 3 fleeing guards. At the same time, Murong Yu also teleported again and again, locked on one of the guards and attacked. Murong Yu's teleportation speed was quite fast, and he deserved to be the first in short-range combat. However, it was far inferior to the speed of soul attack. At the same time, when Murong Yu attacked, the 3 soul chaos fire had already bombarded the souls of the 3 people. Suddenly, the 3 great sages couldn't help but scream, and their figures stopped instantly. Whoosh! Murong Yu rushed behind one of the sages. He sacrificed the Hichu Luo Shu and directly put the other party into it. At the same time, the Chinquan bow and heaven-shocking arrow had already appeared in his hands. Pulling the bowstring to a full moon, the 3 heaven-shaking arrows immediately exploded with a terrifying aura that could destroy the world. They emitted a dazzling divine light and disappeared into the void. They locked onto one of the remaining 2 guards and shot toward him. Soul attack! Soul attack! Murong Yu kept urging the soul chaos fire to bombard the 2 guards, and at the same time, he also pounced on the other guard. The flame of primal chaos continued to bombard the souls of the 2 great sages. It made them feel like they were better off dead. Moreover, the intense pain made them unable to use more strength to escape, and their speed became extremely slow. Bang! The 3 heaven-shocking arrows hit one of the great sages before Murong Yu did. However, it only sent the great sage flying and didn't kill him. However, the heaven-shocking arrow wouldn't come until it killed the enemy. It changed direction in the void and continued to shoot toward the guard. At the same time, Murong Yu's heart moved, and he had already cast out the yin-yang cauldron. After a series of actions, Murong Yu had also teleported to the other guard. The invincible divine fist smashed hard on the guard's body. With a bang, the guard was blasted out, and he spat out blood in the void. Then, his breath of life quickly disappeared. However, at this moment, an extremely terrifying aura broke through the sky from the White Sun City and shot toward this side. Although it was still a distance away from Murong Yu, its speed was extremely fast. Violent, powerful, terrifying, and fast. Oh no! Could it be that the experts of the Li family are here? Murong Yu was shocked. Then, he glanced at the guard who was still running away. He wanted to escape from here now, but he didn't want to let the guard go. Kill him first, then leave here. Murong Yu gritted his teeth fiercely, and in a flash, he had already chased after the great sage guard. Chapter 12:37. When Murong Yu teleported to chase after the great sage-level guard, he sensed that the terrifying aura was still far away in White Sun City. However, when Murong Yu rushed behind the guard, the terrifying aura had already rushed to the middle of White Sun City and Murongyu's position. And all of this happened in the blink of an eye. It was comparable to the speed of teleportation, and the distance of this teleportation was much longer than Murongyu's teleportation distance. As long as there was another moment, the other party might appear in front of Murongyu. In other words, Murongyu only had less than a moment to kill the great sage and then escape here. Otherwise, after a moment, Murongyu might never be able to leave here. Yin-Yang Cauldron, Dragon Bone, Flaming Needle, all kinds of sacred weapons were sacrificed by Murongyu and bombarded the other party crazily. At the same time, he also raised his soul attack ability to the extreme, bombarding the great sage like stormy waves. This great sage's soul was originally severely injured by Murongyu's soul attack. At the same time, he was also bombarded by 3 shocking heaven arrows. Now that Murongyu did this, his soul was almost completely annihilated. His figure stopped in an instant. By the time he reached this step, the instant was almost over. At the same time, Murongyu could sense that the terrifying aura was rapidly approaching. The power had not yet rushed over, but the huge pressure had already suppressed some of the giant trees, boulders, and even a mountaintop where Murongyu was located. Murongyu's breathing also stagnated. Under the pressure of the terrifying pressure, the clothes on his body were instantly turned into dust. His body was riddled with ghastly wounds. At the same time, the power in his body seemed to have stagnated, and the speed of circulation was less than 1% of the usual. It's at least a super expert of the undead realm. Murongyu's expression changed. He took a step forward and entered Hichu Luo Shu. The moment he disappeared, the He-Tu and the Luo Shu also swept away the great sage who hadn't died yet. Teleport. After Murongyu entered Hichu Luo Shu, he teleported out immediately. At the same time, a layer of ripples appeared in the void where he was originally located and fluctuated in all directions. Where do you think you're going? At the moment of teleportation, an angry roar came. Pucci! At the same time, Murongyu's body, which was already shattered, suddenly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. At the same time, a monstrous hand suddenly grabbed down from the sky. Rumble! The huge hand made a grabbing motion in the air. Instantly, the space and earth within a radius of 10 million miles around where Murongyu was originally standing were grabbed by it. Then the hand clenched, bang! With a loud explosion, the void and the earth exploded and were annihilated. It was obvious how powerful and furious the person who came was. Pucci! 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 Murongyu, who had just condensed his body, exploded again. However, he had successfully teleported away. What hit Hichu Luo Shu was only the aftermath of the power of the eruption of the hand. Just this alone had nearly killed Murongyu, who was trapped in the He-Tu and Luo tomes. If the He-Tu and Luo tomes had been caught in his hands, he would have probably died from the shock. Who is it? Who is it? After the hand, a middle-aged man with a gloomy face and murderous aura appeared in the void where Murongyu was originally. 2 terrifying auras shot out from his eyes, staring at the surroundings like a poisonous snake. Anyone who kills a member of the Leaf family must die. The middle-aged man was obviously an expert of the Leaf family. He growled with a cold expression and pressed his hand down. A wave of power emanated from his hand and spread in all directions. At the same time, the space around him started to ripple. The ripples grew more and more intense. In the end, the ripples in the void could no longer be called ripples. They had become raging waves. Bang! All of a sudden, the turbulent void exploded for some unknown reason. The impact of the explosion couldn't hurt the powerful middle-aged man at all. However, the middle-aged man's expression turned ugly. Is it an expert of space? I can't trace it. The middle-aged man's eyes flashed, and his murderous aura grew stronger. Earlier, he'd wanted to use a divine ability to reconstruct the battle and find out who had killed Li Diyu. Alas, he'd failed. There was no way to trace it. In fact, this was Murongyu's method. When Murongyu had entered Hichu Luo Shu, he'd used his spatial ability to completely destroy the aura and images left behind in the void. Even Murong Yu himself couldn't trace it back, let alone the middle-aged man. When he'd left, the ripples in the void had been erasing the aura. This was a reaction that an expert should have. Otherwise, even if he'd killed Li Diyu and the others, the Li family would know that it was Murong Yu who'd killed them and would hunt him down. Under the Li family's coercion, even the City Lord's mansion wasn't willing to protect Murong Yu. After all, compared to Murong Yu alone, the City Lord's mansion wasn't willing to clash with the Li family. That was close. At this time, Murong Yu had already returned to the City Lord's mansion. After coming out of He Tu and Luo Shu, he swaggered out of the City Lord's mansion. Then, he walked around the busiest street in White Sun City before returning to his room. A smile appeared on Murong Yu's face when he entered the world of He Tu and Luo Shu once again. Although he'd killed Li Diyu and the others this time, his harvest wasn't just killing Li Diyu. There were also various sacred weapons, elixirs, and various treasures. Of course, in a small city like Baiyang City, the Li family and the others didn't have any treasures. But these treasures also contained some power. Although they weren't very useful, they were enough to raise Murong Yu's cultivation by a small level. After destroying the corpses of the guards, Murong Yu lined up the sacred weapons he'd obtained from Li Diyu and the others in front of him. The Li family seemed to be relatively rich, because each of the 8 great sages had a sacred weapon, although it was only a low-grade sacred weapon. But the lowest-grade sacred weapon didn't mean it was worthless. Some powerhouses whose strength had reached the undead realm didn't even have a low-grade sacred weapon. In fact, what Murong Yu didn't know was that these great sage guards weren't ordinary servants. After all, in Baiyang City, a great sage powerhouse was already a powerhouse, and an undead realm powerhouse was already considered a great ancestor. These 8 guards were all high-level great sages and were the focus of the Li family's cultivation. It was normal for them to have low-grade sacred weapons. Compared to them, Li Diyu was relatively rich. In addition to a large pile of low-grade sacred crystals, there were 3 low-grade sacred weapons and 1 mid-grade sacred weapon. Just this mid-grade sacred weapon's value had already surpassed the value of all his items. Chaos Furnace Refined. After looking through all the treasures and discovering that there was nothing particularly important, he began to refine these saint artifacts and natural treasures. The Chaos Furnace could refine all things in the world. Soon, these sacred weapons and the like were all refined into the most primitive and purest energy and directly poured into Murong Yu's body. Murong Yu's strength and realm were slowly but steadily increasing. When the energy was almost absorbed, Murong Yu's body shook violently and an aura that was more than 10 times stronger than before burst out. 8th Order Saint. Murong Yu opened his eyes, and 2 terrifying divine lights shot out from his eyes. At the same time, he slowly stood up and revealed a smile on his face. It's not bad to be able to raise a small realm. With the Chaos Furnace, I can indeed raise my realm quickly. Murong Yu was quite satisfied with the speed of his cultivation. After spending some time to consolidate his current cultivation, he suppressed his realm to the First Order Saint realm and left Hichu Luo Shu, appearing in the City Lord's mansion. Murong Yu, young miss is looking for you. Seeing Murong Yu strolling around the City Lord's mansion, a guard walked over and said to him. Murong Yu nodded. Although he didn't know why Fong Ziwen was looking for him, he still walked over. Young Miss Fong, why are you looking for me? Murong Yu asked as he walked straight into Fong Ziwen's residence. Fong Ziwen rolled her eyes. This Murong Yu really didn't have the slightest awareness of a servant. However, she was too lazy to bicker with him. After all, he still acted as if he didn't treat her as his master at all. Did you kill Li Diyu? Fong Ziwen's words were so shocking that Murong Yu almost jumped out of his skin. However, Murong Yu wasn't an ordinary person. Although he was shocked, he didn't reveal the slightest bit of abnormality on the surface. Instead, he revealed a surprised expression and said, "What did you say? That hateful Li Diyu was killed?" Fong Ziwen nodded slightly and couldn't help but reveal a smile on her face. "I heard he died without leaving even a trace. Congratulations, young Miss Fong. In the future, there won't be such a disgusting person bothering you. Murong Yu laughed and sat down without Fong Ziwen's consent. Fong Ziwen couldn't help but roll her eyes again. Speak, did you kill Li Diyu? Murong Yu looked at Fong Ziwen with a helpless expression. Do you think a first-stage great saint like me can kill a high-level great saint like Li Diyu? It's more likely that I'll be killed. Fong Ziwen nodded slightly. I also don't think you can kill that annoying guy Li Diyu. Even if he stood there and let you cut him, you still wouldn't be able to kill him. Murong Yu's face immediately darkened. Who tramples on him like that? However, Fong Ziwen's tone changed. Although I believe you can't kill Li Diyu, the Li family suspects that you killed him. They've already gone to the city lord's mansion to ask us to hand him over. At this point, Fong Ziwen's expression became unsightly. A cold, murderous intent flashed between her brows. Chapter 1238. In the Nine Holy Kingdom, even if it was a small city like the White Sun City, the city lord was still a powerful existence. As long as it was within the territory he was in charge of, no forces would dare to do anything to him. Especially a force like the Li family. How would they dare to order the city lord mansion around? However, not long ago, the Li family's experts had personally come to ask for Murong Yu. The reason was that they suspected Murong Yu had killed Li Diyu. Regarding this, Fong Tianhe was naturally furious. Not to mention whether Murong Yu had killed Li Diyu or not. Just the fact that the Li family had directly come to his door and threatened him was enough to make Fong Tianhe unhappy. After all, he was a city lord, and the Li family could only be considered a tycoon in the White Sun City. What qualifications did they have to order him around? Furthermore, even if Murong Yu had really killed Li Diyu, Fong Tianhe would not hand him over. Once he compromised, the city lord mansion's prestige in the White Sun City would drop to the bottom. Furthermore, if there was a first time, there would be a second time. Once this happened, Fong Tianhe would not be able to suppress the White Sun City anymore. Thus, he directly invited the Li family's people out. As for how, he believed that it was not an ordinary invite. Murong Yu immediately felt strange. Since the Li family has already been kicked out, with their little strength, would they dare to threaten the city lord mansion? Fong Ziwen's eyes flashed with disdain. In the Nine Holy Kingdom, not to mention the Li family, even a powerful existence like the Blood Rain Mountain would not dare to touch the White Sun City. Even though the White Sun City was small, it was still a city of the Nine Holy Kingdom. Whoever dared to touch it would be making an enemy out of the Nine Holy Kingdom. At least, it was clear that the Li family would not dare to make a move against Fong Tianhe. Of course, as for whether they dared to make a move in the dark, that was another matter. In the Holy Empire, the number of city lord-level existences that disappeared every year was unknown. As long as they weren't discovered, the Nine Saint Nation wouldn't be able to do anything to them. Murong Yu's face instantly darkened. Then what do you mean? You want to hand me over? Fong Ziwen rolled her eyes. If I were to hand you over, would you still be here? We just wanted to go to the Li family and explain things clearly. The Li family suspects that I killed Li Diyu. If I send myself to their door, wouldn't I be slaughtered by them? They have to find a scapegoat. Do they dare? Fong Ziwen said with killing intent. She paused for a moment before continuing. You have to clarify this matter. Otherwise, you'll be in danger at any time in White Sun City. Moreover, the Li clan would be going to the mystic realm at the same time. They will definitely make a move on you then. Murong Yu pondered for a moment and finally decided to go with Fong Ziwen to the Li clan. Confront the Li family? Murong Yu had never been afraid. When Murong Yu arrived at the Li clan, everyone in the Li clan looked at Murong Yu with shock and indifference, as if they were looking at a dead man. He's the one who killed young Master Li Diyu. Everyone's faces were filled with suspicion. This was because the Murong Yu they saw was merely a first-order saint. In the Li clan's main hall, apart from a few elders who had reached the undead realm, there were also a few great saints. There were even some outstanding disciples of the younger generation who were only in the saint realm. When Murong Yu stepped into the main hall, everyone's gaze landed on him. Every single one of them was brimming with killing intent. In fact, an incomparably powerful aura surged towards Murong Yu like a stormy sea, intending to suppress him. A show of strength. Seeing this, Fong Ziwen took a step forward and stood in front of Murong Yu. She coldly swept her gaze over the Li clan's members, then looked at the middle-aged man sitting on the main seat. The middle-aged man's eyes were indifferent as he calmly sized up Murong Yu. From the aura vaguely emitted from his body, Murong Yu could feel that this person was the undead realm powerhouse who shot from the City Lord's mansion to the White Sun Mountain range and almost killed him. The Li clan's patriarch, Li Yongyuan. He was Li Diyu's biological father. It was precisely because of this that he immediately rushed over after learning of Li Diyu's death that day. It was also because of this that he personally came out to deal with this matter today. Is this how the so-called prominent clans of White Sun City receive their distinguished guests? Fong Ziwen coldly looked at the Li clan's members and sneered. The Li clan's members suddenly fell silent, and their auras were instantly retracted. Although they wanted to suppress Murong Yu and even kill him, they had no choice. They didn't dare to touch a single hair on Fong Ziwen's head. Otherwise, the moment they touched Fong Ziwen, Fong Tianhe would bring the powerhouses of the City Lord's mansion to kill them. Murong Yu sneered. His gaze slowly swept across the Li clan's members. Then he indifferently looked at Li Yongyuan. I heard that you all suspect that I killed that idiot Li Diyu. I don't know if I heard wrong, or if your brains are all abnormal. After indifferently looking at Li Yongyuan, Murong Yu suddenly spoke. How dare you? You're courting death. In an instant, everyone in the Li clan, except for Li Yongyuan, was furious. As the saying goes, a person's death is like an extinguished lamp. How could he insult the other party after death? This caused many of the Li clan's powerhouses to be filled with killing intent. If it wasn't for Fong Ziwen protecting Murong Yu, and if it wasn't for an undead realm guard of the City Lord's mansion standing beside Murong Yu, someone from Li clan would have definitely killed Murong Yu. Murong Yu didn't care about these people's killing intent. He just shook his head and said with a helpless expression, The Li clan is a famous clan in White Sun City, but I don't understand. How can you all be one of the 4 great clans with your brains and IQ? Are you all blind, or are you really hopelessly stupid? Can't you see that I'm only a 1st level saint? That idiot Li Diyu is said to be a 9th level great saint. Can I kill him? Even if he stood there and let me kill him, I wouldn't be able to kill him. You actually suspect that I killed him. Have your heads been squeezed by a door? In the beginning, Murong Yu had spoken about this matter in a very calm manner. However, in the end, he was almost roaring and cursing at the people of the Li clan. The Li clan's people were scolded until their faces were ashen. Endless killing intent burst out and spread throughout the entire hall. It was as if the entire hall was at absolute zero. It was bone-chillingly cold. Also, when was Li Diyu killed? I heard it was a few days ago, right? You all must be blind. I was clearly in White Sun City that day. Please use your brains before you do anything. Li Diyu was killed in the White Sun Mountain range, but I was in White Sun City. I'm very curious to ask all the great saints present. Can you all rush back to White Sun City from the White Sun Mountain range in 2 hours? The Li clan's people fell silent. Of course, they knew that when Li Diyu died, Murong Yu was still in White Sun City. Murong Yu had long expected this day. Thus, after he killed Li Diyu, he returned to White Sun City and wandered around the busiest street in White Sun City for half a day. It was all for the City Lord's mansion and the Li clan's people. Murong Yu, you don't have to quibble. That day, I clearly saw Li Diyu and his group follow you out of White Sun City. In the end, they were killed in the White Sun Mountain range. A great saint from the Li clan looked at Murong Yu with murderous intent and said coldly, he couldn't help but want to kill Murong Yu. A few people. Do you all think I'm an undead realm expert? I can even kill a few great saints at the same time. If I'm an undead realm expert, or even stronger, I'll directly kill all of you idiots. This is simply nonsense. The more Murong Yu spoke, the more agitated he became. He almost ran up to the Li clan's experts and pointed his finger at their noses while cursing. Looking at Murong Yu, who was pointing at them and cursing like a shrew, the faces of the Li clan's experts were as black as the bottom of a pot. Each of them gnashed their teeth in hatred and wanted to slap Murong-yu to death. However, they didn't dare to do so, although Murong-yu's words were full of insults to them. Every word he said was reasonable. Although his words were fierce, he was defending himself. Murong-yu, shut up. A sage from the Li clan's younger generation finally couldn't help but shout. He almost rushed up to Murong-yu to kill him. Shut up? You all are such idiots and did such a stupid thing. How can I shut up? Do you all want to kill me? Or do you all have no idea who killed Li Diyu? So you could just find someone to kill him for Li Diyu? I'm not afraid to say it out loud. If I had the strength, I would definitely kill Li Diyu. It's a pity that he died too early. Otherwise, I would have killed him with my own hands. Murong-yu shook his head with a look of pity. This made the Li clan's people even angrier. However, Fong Ziwen almost couldn't help laughing. At the same time, she finally saw Murong-yu's audacity. After making the sage speechless, Murong-yu continued, Speak. This time, you framed me and caused me to suffer great mental, psychological, and physical damage. You should at least give me some compensation, right? Just give me a few high-grade saint artifacts. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. This guy came to the Li clan and cursed at the Li clan's experts. In the end, he even asked the Li clan to compensate him. How could he be so unscrupulous? How could he be so arrogant? Scram, don't let me see you again. Otherwise, I'll kill you without mercy. At this moment, the Li clan's patriarch, Li Yongyuan, who had been calm all this time, suddenly shouted. At the same time, he waved his hand, and a powerful force immediately swept towards Murong-yu and the others, wanting to send them flying. Remember, it's best to send the high-grade saint artifacts to the city lord's mansion as soon as possible. Murong-yu sneered and turned to walk out of the hall. Chapter 1239. Family Head, why didn't you let me kill him? Seeing Murong-yu leave, one of the Li family's great sage experts couldn't help but ask loudly. You can't kill him. Li family head Li Yongyuan's eyes flashed with a cold light. Although his expression was calm, and there wasn't any anger, he didn't care. He wanted to kill Murong-yu, but that didn't mean he didn't want to kill Murong-yu. In fact, as the patriarch of the family, his desire to kill Murong-yu was stronger than anyone else present. However, he couldn't kill Murong-yu because they didn't have any evidence. If they were to kill Murong-yu just like that, then the Li family wouldn't be far from extinction. Then are we just going to let him go? Even if he didn't kill Li Diyu, he insulted our Li family. I can't wait to kill him. Another great saint said angrily. Not killing him now doesn't mean we're going to let him go. Li Yongyuan's eyes flashed with a cold light. Along the way, the people from the Li family were flabbergasted when they saw Murong-yu and the other two swaggering out of the Li family. Murong-yu was the first person to enter the Li family under such circumstances and leave safely. Not to mention the Li family members. Even Fong Ziwen, who had been by his side, couldn't believe it. While she couldn't believe it, she was also shocked by Murong-yu's audacity. She couldn't help but ask, Murong-yu, why are you so unscrupulous and arrogant? Aren't you afraid they'll kill you in anger? Do you really want to know the answer? Murong-yu looked at Fong Ziwen and grinned. Nonsense. Why would I ask if I didn't want to know the answer? Fong Ziwen glared at him and said, Don't waste time. Hurry up and say it. Murong-yu unhurriedly let out a dry cough before continuing, Because they don't dare to kill me. Fong Ziwen found it strange and said, They don't dare to kill you? If you say that, what if one of them can't help but accidentally kill you? The Li family's patriarch wouldn't dare to let anyone from the Li family fail. If I'm killed, then their Li family is directly challenging the dignity of the city lord's estate. At that time, the destruction of the Li family won't be far away. At the end of the day, the Li family was wary of the city lord mansion. To put it simply, they were wary of the 9 Saint Nation. If Murong-yu didn't enter the Li clan with Fong Ziwen, then he wouldn't have been able to come out. But if Fong Ziwen was by his side, the Li family wouldn't dare to touch him. This stinking brat. I'm afraid he has already calculated this beforehand. Fong Ziwen muttered in her heart as she looked at Murong-yu. She suddenly realized that she used to think that she understood Murongyu a little. However, the longer he interacted with Murongyu, the more he felt that Murongyu was like an enigma that couldn't be seen through. In the main hall of the city lord's mansion, only Fong Tianhe and Fong Ziwen were present. Father, do you think that Murongyu is really someone who suppressed his cultivation? Fong Ziwen asked with a frown. Fong Tianhe shook his head because he couldn't tell if Murongyu was really suppressing his cultivation or not. He only saw Murongyu as a first-order saint. Although I can't tell if he is suppressing his cultivation or not, based on his performance in the Li family, his past is definitely not simple. A person who came from a small mountain village definitely doesn't have such courage. He clearly saw what happened in the Li family. He had to see it because his precious daughter was also inside. If something unexpected happened, wouldn't he regret it to death? Thus, he had to control the pace of things. This stinking brat is only relying on our city lord's mansion to curse at the Leaf family. But the Leaf family doesn't dare to do anything. They don't have the slightest scruple. If you were him, even if you had the city lord's mansion support, would you dare to do that? Fong Tianhe looked at Fong Ziwen and said indifferently. Although Fong Ziwen was mature, she still lacked experience. Sometimes, she didn't consider things very comprehensively. Father, are you suspecting that he's an ascender? Fong Ziwen was startled. If an ascender had appeared in their territory before, they wouldn't be startled at all. Instead, they would be very happy to rope him in. However, after what happened a while ago, no one dared to take in an ascender. If they were discovered, they would die without a doubt. Fong Tianhe nodded slightly. His eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. Father, if Murongyu is really an ascender, should we report it? Fong Ziwen asked nervously. Murongyu's identity was related to the survival of their Fong family. After returning to his mansion, Murongyu once again entered the Hichu Luoshu world to cultivate. The strength of a saint was still too weak. He didn't even have the most basic ability to protect himself. Time passed slowly. While Murongyu was cultivating in seclusion, the Li family was also looking for Li Diyu's murderer. However, they didn't find anything. Murongyu also didn't find anything. Because there was no powerful item for him to refine, his cultivation had basically stopped. He needed items that contained a large amount of power to increase his cultivation. Fortunately, the secret realm he had been waiting for was finally about to open. The number of secret realms, and all kinds of danger zones in the Holy World was no less than the God World. There were many secret realms in the Holy World that were open. Anyone could enter them at any time. However, Murongyu was new here. He wasn't familiar with them. Most importantly, he was too weak. Walking in the Holy World, there was the possibility of dying at any time. The vast sea secret realm was a secret realm controlled by the White Sun City. It was in the depths of the White Sun mountain range. Every once in a while, the vast sea secret realm would open. During the opening period, as long as it was within the White Sun City, or even the forces and expert from other places, they would be able to enter. Of course, they couldn't enter the vast sea secret realm for free. Not only did they have to pay a certain amount of entrance fee to the White Sun City before entering, but after exiting the vast sea secret realm, they also had to split the rewards with the White Sun City. How black-hearted! Seeing how many forces and individuals entered the vast sea secret realm excitedly after paying a large amount of resources, Murongyu couldn't help but roll his eyes. The White Sun City didn't have to do anything. Just by the time the vast sea secret realm opened, the amount they earned was enough for them to operate for a long time. Hearing Murongyu's words, Fong Ziwen was a little unhappy. Our White Sun City is already generous enough. Some other cities or forces don't even open their secret realms to the public, even if it's 30, 70, or even 10, 90. All crows are black. Murongyu interrupted. Can undead realm experts enter too? Murongyu saw an undead realm expert fly into the vast sea secret realm and couldn't help but ask in surprise. Anyone can enter. Murongyu's face instantly darkened. He glanced at the Leaf family members standing not far away from him. Among these people, there were many great Sage Realm experts, and even undead realm experts. Moreover, other than the Lee family, the others would definitely make a move on him. After all, he had a high-grade sacred artifact. Once he was killed, this trip to the vast sea secret realm would not have been in vain. Muronyu wasn't afraid of great Sage Realm experts. However, undead realm experts were much stronger than him. If he encountered a high-level undead realm expert, he wouldn't even have the chance to escape. Muronyu, our Lee family will wait for you in the secret realm. A cold laugh filled with strong, killing intent sounded in Muronyu's ears. Muronyu looked at the Lee family and saw several people glaring at him with murderous intent. You dare to provoke me? I'll kill you all. Muronyu's eyes flashed with cold, killing intent. Muronyu, although you defeated me last time, you still won. This time, your gains won't be as good as mine. Yu and Jun walked up and laughed at Muronyu, then entered the vast sea secret realm first. Then, the other two of the four princes, Zhou Xiuzhu and Wu Guangda, entered the vast sea secret realm either alone or together. After half a day, these saints finally all entered the vast sea secret realm. Of course, Muronyu was the only exception. They were the last group to enter. As they flew into the vast sea secret realm, Muronyu couldn't help but ask, I don't need to split my gains with the city lord's mansion, right? Fong Ziwen's face darkened. No need, if you can get some treasures. In other words, Muronyu wouldn't be able to get any treasures. Muronyu immediately laughed. They all thought he wouldn't be able to get any treasures. If it were before, he might not be able to get any treasures. But now, those treasures couldn't hide from his eyes at all. Wherever Muronyu went, as long as there were treasures, he could directly take them. He wasn't like other people, who even if they stepped on a treasure, they would think it was a pile of trash and not a treasure. Brat, do you think you'll get a lot of treasures? Seeing Muronyu's confident smile, Fong Ziwen couldn't help but feel somewhat displeased. If my character is good, I'll just stand there and let treasures fall from the sky. I believe my character is the best. Muronyu smiled indifferently. Fong Ziwen rolled her eyes. Since that's the case, I'll wait and see. But if you stay by my side, you definitely won't be able to find any treasures. Then I'll go alone. That's settled. Muronyu immediately decided. This was originally his intention, but he didn't know how to explain it to Fong Ziwen. After all, he had too many secrets, and it wasn't suitable for him to stay with others. Seeing that Fong Ziwen still wanted to say something, Muronyu continued, I'm doing this for your own good. In the vast sea secret realm, the City Lord's mansion has no deterrents. It's too dangerous to stay with me, so we'll have to split up. As they spoke, they were already swallowed by the power of the vast sea secret realm. Chapter 1240. Most of the secret planes were randomly teleported when entering. However, this randomization also had a range, and it would not exceed this range. Otherwise, those who entered the secret plane would not be able to leave. This was because during the teleportation process, Muronyu was not with Fong Ziwen. Therefore, when he appeared in the secret plane, he was not in the same place as Fong Ziwen. Swish! The moment Muronyu sensed that he had entered the secret plane, he took out the Hichu Luo Shu and turned it into a set of underwear. After ascending from the mortal world to the highest holy world, Muronyu would have lived in vain if he did not have this awareness. Sure enough, before Muronyu could land on the ground, a frightening energy had already pierced through the air and locked onto him. Then it violently shot towards him. A cold, killing intent flashed through Muronyu's heart. He took a step forward in the void and disappeared in an instant. He could not act rashly before observing clearly. Otherwise, once he encountered a high-level undead expert, he would not be able to bear the consequences. After all, he had seen many undead saints enter the secret plane before. Seeing that his attack had missed, and Muronyu seemed to have disappeared into thin air, the person who attacked could not help but cry out in surprise. Beside this person, a battle broke out. It was simply a chaotic battle. As soon as he entered the secret plane, The restrictions outside were all gone. It did not matter if you were from the four great clans or the city lord's mansion. In the blink of an eye, Muronyu disappeared from where he stood. During this process, he had already concealed himself. Therefore, those people on the ground did not find any trace of him at all. After leaving the crowd far away, Muronyu floated in the void and observed the place where he was. This was a small island about 100 million miles in size. Outside the small island was the endless sea. However, there were many islands of different sizes in the sea. When they were teleported, they were randomly teleported to this island. The secret plane of the sea, as the name suggested, was an endless sea. It was vast and boundless. Legend had it that after the secret plane of the sea was discovered, no one knew where the end of the secret plane of the sea was. However, sacred weapons kept appearing in the secret plane of the sea. Among the sacred weapons in the holy world, other than those that were thought to be refined, there were also sacred weapons that were born naturally. In addition to these sacred weapons and magic treasures, there were also many natural treasures in the secret plane of the sea. Almost everyone who entered the secret plane of the sea would gain something. Muronyu stood at the edge of the island, looking at the endless island in a daze, because he did not know where to go. It was as if the island they were on was the center of the island, and they could leave in any direction. Swish, swish, swish. While Muronyu was still in a daze, the experts that had entered the island had already entered the endless ocean. Ships of various sizes were flying across the sea, quickly disappearing into the distance. Ships. Seeing these ships, Muronyu was depressed. Before entering the secret plane of the sea, he only had a rough understanding of the secret plane of the sea. He knew that although the secret plane of the sea did not suppress one's cultivation level, it was extremely vast. However, the vast sea mystic realm was extremely large, and most of it was ocean. The yellow seawater was extremely corrosive. Ordinary saint bodies would quickly collapse after coming into contact with the seawater. If one wanted to fly in the secret plane of the sea, they needed a tool. It was the ship that everyone was on, the Uluo's bone demon ship. This ship was made from the bones of a demon beast called the Uluo. In the sea, it could isolate the aura of the sea and could even float in the sea. This was because everything else could not float above the sea. Although there is no possibility of running out of energy, the bird that pokes its head out will be shot. If I fly freely in the sea, wouldn't it be telling others that I have a treasure? And the sea water is also a problem. Muronyu thought to himself and began to look around. Borrow a ship. This was Murongyu's idea. However, what made Muronyu gloomy was that whenever he approached, those people would start chasing him away before he could even open his mouth. If he wanted to take a ship, he had to at least take out a low-grade saint weapon. Moreover, he had to be powerful. Muronyu did not have powerful strength and no saint weapon to give, so no one paid attention to him. In the end, Muronyu was the only one left on the island. This made him feel very depressed, and he even had the thought of killing them and seizing their ship. However, he was not a robber. As long as others did not provoke him, he would not directly kill people like this. In the end, Muronyu could only helplessly soar into the air and shoot in a direction. Boom! As soon as Muronyu entered the sea, his speed suddenly slowed down. At this moment, he was surrounded by mist that was almost invisible to the naked eye. This was water vapor. This was also the reason why he could not fly directly above the sea. Although the power of water vapor was not as powerful as the sea water, it was still very terrifying. Chi. In an instant, Muronyu's clothes were corroded into fine powder. After the water vapor corroded his clothes, it rushed toward Muronyu's saint body like a torrent. As soon as it came into contact with him, Muronyu's body emitted a green smoke. Muronyu saw that his exposed skin had begun to fester, and this was just the beginning. After the water vapor came into contact with his skin, it quickly drilled into his body, wanting to corrode Muronyu's body. Muronyu's heart moved, and the life force in his body washed the surface of his body. Immediately, his injuries recovered to their peak state. However, as soon as they recovered, they were corroded by the water vapor again. Moron, you could only repair them again. We can't go on like this. Moron, you frowned slightly. He had already taken out the Inyan cauldron, and it was suspended above his head. Black flame of primal chaos fell from the Inyan cauldron and enveloped Murong Yu's entire body. Suddenly, the water vapor was burned and annihilated wherever the flame of primal chaos passed. However, there was still a large amount of water vapor surging from all directions. Although it was burned clean as soon as it came into contact with the flame of primal chaos, it would be damaged over time. The damage caused by the flame of primal chaos was simply a waste of Murong Yu's power. However, for the time being, Murong Yu could still bear it. Hichu Luoshu is powerful, but it is not omnipotent. Murong Yu sighed after he recovered his body. Although he had already wrapped the Hichu Luoshu around his body, he could not prevent the water vapor from seeping in unless he entered the Hichu Luoshu. We'll have to get a boat. Murong Yu identified the direction, then shot towards a place with a lot of people. Where there were many people, there would be fighting. Where there was fighting, there would be death. If they died, then Murong Yu could benefit from it and take away their Inluo's bone demon boat. Hey, brother, do you want to take a boat? Just as Murong Yu was flying, a voice came from his side. Murong Yu stopped flying and looked not far away. He saw a huge Inluo's bone demon boat that could accommodate dozens of saints quickly coming from the right. However, there was only a young man in Class A on the huge boat. It was this young man who greeted Murong Yu. Brother, if you don't mind, I would like to borrow your boat. This Songhai secret realm is too scary. I'm afraid I won't be able to hold on for long. However, I don't have any saint weapons on me as a reward. Murong Yu looked at the young man and said indifferently, It's fine. You can give it to me after you get the treasure. The young man greeted Murong Yu very warmly and asked him to come down. At the same time, he inadvertently glanced at the Inyan cauldron above Murong Yu's head. However, he did not stop at all. Brother, your strength is amazing. You can actually stand directly on the surface of the sea and be safe. Murong Yu landed on Class A and looked at the young man with surprise. The young man did not use any power to protect himself. Instead, he was directly exposed to the endless water vapor. If it wasn't because he was too strong, then it was because he had a powerful magic treasure on him. This was because Murong Yu saw that the light he was emitting was extremely strong. However, he didn't know if it was the young man's own power or the magic treasure on him. It's nothing. I've entered the Songhai secret realm many times. I just used the bones of the Yu Luo demon beast to refine a magic treasure. Brother, from your appearance, you didn't prepare the Yu Luo demon boat and related magic treasures in advance? The young man looked at Murong Yu with a strange gaze. Murong Yu smiled embarrassedly. Perhaps Feng Ziwen was prepared. Perhaps Feng Ziwen was planning to give him the magic treasures after entering the Songhai secret realm. However, they had been separated. It's okay. We're mainly looking for treasures on some islands. There's no water or water vapor. It's fine. We'll just stay together for the rest of the way. Right? I'm called Wu Bai. You can call me Big Brother Wu. The young man patted Murong Yu's shoulder like a big brother. Murong Yu immediately cooperated and revealed a grateful expression. At the same time, he followed the young man into the boat. As soon as the door opened, a loud noise was heard. Murong Yu looked around and saw that there was another space inside the boat. It was about 100 square meters, and there were hundreds of people inside. It was very lively. The moment the door opened, everyone's eyes shot to Murong Yu. There was curiosity, surprise, disdain, indifference. There were all kinds of looks. Come in. Some of these people are like you. Some of them are my friends. However, we're all brothers from now on. Wu Bai smiled and said to Murong Yu, Chapter 1241. In the cabin, there were all kinds of people. However, most of them were great sage-level powerhouses. There were very few sage-level powerhouses. The few that were limited were all high-level sages. They were at least level 8 or level 9 sages. In addition, Murong Yu even saw a few undead realm powerhouses. However, They were all low-level, undead realm powerhouses. After these people glanced at Murong Yu and saw that he was only a level 1 sage, they withdrew their gazes. None of them had any interest in Murong Yu, and none of them even bothered to greet him. After all, they were all competitors. Even if they were in groups, they would only be with powerful people. Otherwise, with a level 1 sage, he wouldn't be able to help them at all. He might even drag them down and split the treasures with him. In response, Murong Yu just smiled faintly and walked straight to a corner of the cabin and sat down cross-legged. They had no interest in befriending Murong Yu, and Murong Yu had no interest in that either. The Moonlight Bone Demon ship continued forward. Wu Bai greeted Murong Yu for a while and then left. However, he didn't immediately go out to Class A outside. Presumably, even if there really was a magic treasure refined from the bones of the Moonlight Bone Demon beast, his consumption wouldn't be small. The cabin was bustling with noise and excitement. Aside from Murong Yu, the others were either in groups of 2 or 3, or in groups of 4 or 5. These are all small teams. Once they reached the island, they would search for treasures together. Although Murong Yu just sat cross-legged in the corner and closed his eyes to rest, after half a day, he finally understood the origin of this ship. The Moonlight Bone Demon beast was extremely powerful. It was also very small and had very few bones. Ordinary people didn't have the ability to kill a Moonlight Bone Demon beast. Even if they killed it, it was extremely difficult to refine a Moonlight Bone Demon beast into an armor, let alone a ship. Therefore, the Moonlight Bone Demon ship that Murong Yu saw before was just a small wooden boat that could only hold a few people. However, he had never seen a ship as big as the one he was on. This was an organization, a very powerful organization. Their main purpose was to serve those who did not have the ability to obtain Yu Luo's Bone Yao ship, and to take them into the depths of the vast sea secret realm. One had to know that those who couldn't get their hands on the ship weren't necessarily low-level saints. Even undead and imperishable saints might not have the ship. After all, their time was precious. How could they have the time to kill a small number of Yu Luo demon beasts? In layman's terms, the boat that Murong Yu was on was a ferry. However, what surprised Murong Yu was that these people had to pay a certain amount of resources if they wanted to upload the treasures. Moreover, they had to give them a portion of the treasures as fees after they obtained the treasures. Otherwise, you can only stay in the depths of the vast sea secret realm forever. Or perhaps they will be hunted down forever. Murong Yu sneered in his heart. They better not try anything funny. If they do, I will give them the resources they deserve. Otherwise, no matter how powerful their organization is, we will kill them without mercy. The huge Yu Luo's Bone Yao ship quickly shot forward in the endless sea. The first few days were very quiet. Moreover, more and more people were uploading, making the already narrow cabin even more crowded. Whoosh! On this day, the cabin door suddenly opened, and then a petite figure rushed in. Just like the others who had entered the cabin, almost everyone's gaze shot over. Murong Yu coincidentally opened his eyes and involuntarily glanced at the petite figure that had just rushed into the cabin. She was a petite girl who was about 16 or 17 years old and was dressed in a light green robe. Her figure was a little thin and still very young. Moreover, the girl's eyes were red, and 2 streaks of tears streaked across her face. She seemed to be crying. She looked very pitiful. First-level saint. Murong Yu frowned slightly. Why did this girl enter the vast sea secret realm? With her strength, she could die in the vast sea secret realm at any time. Little beauty, come over here. In the cabin, a burly man suddenly shouted. Although the girl was still young and immature. But some people love this type of food. Hearing the burly man's voice, the girl was immediately frightened like a frightened rabbit. She involuntarily leaned against the corner of the cabin and looked at the people in the cabin in horror. What a delicate little beauty. Haha, come over to me, I will protect you. Seeing the girl's appearance, some people with special interests were even more excited. Some people even walked towards the girl. The girl seemed to be very frightened. Her hands tightly grasped the corner of her clothes, her back against the cabin, and she kept retreating. Seeing this, Moronyu narrowed his eyes slightly, and a look of disgust flashed across his eyes. Ah! The young girl suddenly screamed. She tripped, and her whole body fell to the ground. Perhaps because she was frightened, the girl did not react like a saint at all. Like a mortal girl, she fell to the bottom of the cabin. However, just as the girl was about to fall to the ground, a strong hand grabbed her weak shoulder and helped her up. I'm sorry. The girl looked at Moronyu, who helped her up with a frightened expression. Her voice was as pleasant as an oriole's, but it was weak with a trace of fear. It turned out that the person who tripped her was Moronyu. In this regard, Moronyu was also quite speechless. He was sitting here alone, and the girl didn't even see him. How could he endure this? However, this also showed how frightened and helpless the girl was. The cabin was not big, and the girl just stood up. A burly man had rushed over, laughing, and stretched out his big hand to grab the girl. The girl was frightened and retreated, but behind her was the cabin wall. Where was there any way to retreat? Therefore, she just leaned against the cabin wall and looked at the burly man who was trying to grab her with a face full of horror. The other party was in the great saint realm, and his strength was many times more than the girl's. Seeing that the girl was about to fall into the hands of the burly man, the other people in the cabin just looked at this scene indifferently. No one could come out to intervene. Even the few undead experts were the same. Everything had nothing to do with them. Moronyu took a deep breath and slowly stood up. Things happened around him, and he couldn't just ignore it. Get lost. Moronyu stood beside the girl, and his tall body blocked the whole girl. At the same time, he shouted coldly at the burly man with a cold face. The burly man was startled at first, and then he laughed grimly. Little bastard, how dare you interfere with my business? Get lost. As he spoke, he grabbed Moronyu's head with his big hand. Wu Bai was at the other end of the cabin, watching all this with an indifferent expression, and had no intention to stop it. Get lost if you don't want to die. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless. Moronyu's face turned cold, and a cold, murderous intent flashed between his eyebrows. The burly man's big hand stopped when he heard this, and then he laughed loudly. Little bastard, are you kidding? You're just a first-order saint, and you dare to meddle in other people's business. You really don't know what's good for you. Today I'll kill you. As he spoke, his large hand once again made a grabbing motion. Get lost. Moronyu let out another roar as he fiercely punched out with his invincible divine fist. The burly man's attack was still halfway, and Moronyu's fist had already hit the burly man's face. Crack! The sound of bones breaking could be heard. Everyone suddenly saw the burly man's whole face collapse. At the same time, the burly man was directly hit and flew out. Silence. The whole cabin was silent, and everyone looked at Moronyu in disbelief. It must be that the great saint didn't have any defense, so he succeeded. Yes, it must be so. This thought instantly appeared in everyone's mind. Otherwise, they wouldn't believe that Moronyu, a first-order saint, could send a burly man flying with a punch. In fact, they didn't know Moronyu's strength. At this time, he was already an 8th-order saint, and with his strength, it was not difficult to deal with a low-level great saint. The burly man was stunned, but his instinctive reaction of a great saint allowed him to quickly stabilize his body and stand in the cabin. However, a few unlucky people who couldn't dodge in time were sent flying. Little bastard, how dare you hit me? The burly man reacted and roared with murderous intent. Bang! However, before he could finish his sentence, he was sent flying once again. The one who attacked was Moronyu. It turned out that after the burly man was sent flying, he also moved. He took a step forward and arrived in front of the burly man. Once again, he sent the burly man flying with a punch. What a fast speed! A look of surprise flashed across the eyes of everyone in the cabin. Although the cabin was not big, any one of them could cross this distance. The speed they were talking about was not just physical speed, but also reaction speed. Moronyu's 2 speeds were too fast. However, the gap was always there. Even if Moronyu's speed was fast, he couldn't kill the great saint, unless he wanted to reveal his true strength. Little bastard, I'm going to kill you. Being sent flying twice by Murong, you made the burly man very angry and humiliated. He roared and was about to unleash the power of a great saint. However, at this moment, a large hand pressed down on his shoulder. The heavy force directly suppressed his power that had not yet been raised. Fighting is not allowed in the cabin. If you want to fight, please go outside. A cold voice entered the burly man's ears, making him instantly quiet down. If he could fly freely in the sea, why would he need to enter this ship? Moreover, the person who held him down was much stronger than him. He didn't dare to resist at all. Otherwise, he might be thrown outside. The person who held him down was Wu Bai. Chapter 1242. Thank you. Murong Yu returned to his original spot. Just as he sat down, a weak voice sounded in his ear. Murong Yu turned to look at the girl who spoke. He saw that her eyes were flickering and her face was filled with fear. Even if she was Murong Yu, she still believed him completely. Looking at the timid girl, Murong Yu was immediately depressed. How did this girl survive in the cruel holy world with her personality? However, he was not interested in delving into it. He only nodded slightly and said, "It's fine. You can stay here. None of them will dare to touch you." As he spoke, Murong Yu took out a set of clothes from the Hichu Luo Shu and handed it to the girl. This was because some parts of the girl's clothes were already torn, revealing her creamy skin. Bright and clean, it was especially tempting. "Thank you." A look of gratitude flashed across the girl's eyes. She hurriedly put on Murong Yu's jacket, covering her exposed body. Although Murong Yu's jacket was very big on her, it was still better than exposing her body. In fact, Murong Yu had Zhao Jiqing, Yu Mengqing, and the others' clothes. However, Murong Yu did not give it to the girl. It was not that he had any bad intentions, but even if he gave it to the girl, she had no place to put it on. It was better to just put on a bigger piece of clothing. Murong Yu only nodded and closed his eyes to rest. The girl was also close to Murong Yu. In fact, Murong Yu could even feel that the girl's body was trembling slightly, as if she had not calmed down yet. "With your strength, you should not have come to the Azure Sea secret realm," Murong Yu suddenly said. The girl seemed to be frightened and almost jumped up in fright. However, when she saw that it was Murong Yu who spoke, she secretly heaved a sigh of relief. However, Murong Yu saw that the girl's eyes were wet. Then big drops of tears rolled down. Murong Yu was immediately depressed. Could it be that he had touched the girl's sore spot? "Father and I depended on each other for survival, but we were attacked by ferocious beasts in the sea. In order to protect me and cover my escape, my father was killed by a ferocious beast," the young girl said in a low voice, and, in the end, she was already sobbing. Murong Yu was speechless. "I'm sorry." The young girl shook her head, but she was already weeping and washing her face with tears. Next, Murong Yu tried to comfort the girl, but the more he comforted her, the sadder she became. In the end, the young girl even cried in Murong Yu's arms, venting the pain of losing her family. However, during this process, Murong Yu had a rough understanding of the girl. The young girl's name was Gong Sun Ningyu. She and her father depended on each other for survival. However, his father was only a low-level great sage and wasn't very strong. As a result, surviving in the saint's world was extremely difficult. They had heard about the large number of treasures in the Neptunian secret realm, which was why they wanted to take the risk. However, the first time they entered the Neptunian secret realm, Gong Sun Ningyu's father met with misfortune. Fortunately, they just happened to run into Wu Bai's ship passing by. Otherwise, with Gong Sun Ningyu's strength, she would have been killed by a ferocious beast or someone else long ago. Boom! Suddenly, the huge Moonlight's bony ship shook violently, as if the ship had suddenly run aground. Immediately, a considerable number of people in the cabin who were unprepared were thrown out. Rumble, when the ship ran aground, strands of indescribable power constantly came from the front, directly passing through the body and rushing into the soul space, attacking the soul. Murong Yu's soul only trembled slightly, and the discomfort completely disappeared. However, there were people in the cabin who could not endure the sudden soul attack and cried out miserably. Soul attack! Murong glanced at the girl beside him, but saw that she was completely fine. The soul attack seemed to have no effect on her. This surprised Murong a little. After all, even the souls of the great saint experts in the cabin were affected, and the girl was only a first-order great saint. She definitely did not hide her cultivation realm. This was because Murong saw the light of power on her body. Of course, if the girl's strength was so strong that even Murong could not see through her, then Murong would have nothing to say. We've arrived at Soul-Devouring Island. Everyone, let's go out and search for treasures. Wu Bai shouted and opened the cabin door. Suddenly, a large number of figures rushed out quickly. In the blink of an eye, only Murong, Gong Sun Ningyu, and a few others were left in the cabin. Murong heart skipped a beat, and he stood up and walked out of the cabin. At the same time Murong moved, Gong Sun Ningyu also stood up and followed Murong step by step. We will stay on Soul-Devouring Island for a year. After a year, we will set sail again today. I hope everyone will come back on time. Otherwise, we will not wait for you. Wu Bai said as he waved his hand and put away the big ship. Then, he nodded slightly at Murong and led his men into the depths of Soul-Devouring Island. At this time, the people who came out of the big ship were already familiar with the extent of the soul attack. Although they still felt a little uncomfortable, they did not feel any pain. They could basically move freely. Of course, the deeper they went, the more powerful the soul attack would be. Soul-devouring, soul-devouring. Murong looked at the center of the island and felt the soul attack that seemed to devour souls. His eyes shone brightly. This soul-devouring island must have a sacred artifact or other treasures that affect the soul. Murong thought his heart, but his heart was already burning. How bad could a sacred artifact that could emit such power from so far away be? If he could get his hands on it and activate its power, he could even fight against an imperishable stage expert. While Murong was looking at the center of the island with a burning heart, Gong Sun Ningyu, who had been following beside him, suddenly grabbed Murong's shoulder. "Big brother, he's coming." Gong Sun Ningyu's voice was trembling as fear flashed across her face. Murong turned his head and saw the man he'd beaten up on the boat walking over with a sinister grin on his face. As for the others, other than a few who stayed to watch, the others had already gone deep into the island. After all, they were all here to search for treasures. "Let's go." A cold, killing intent flashed across Murong's eyes as he grabbed Gong Sun Ningyu's waist. His figure flickered as he flew off into the distance. A strong masculine scent assaulted her nose. Although Gong Sun Ningyu was still a little immature, she was still a woman and was at the age of yearning for love. Therefore, her pretty face immediately blushed. "Little bastard, let's see where you can run." The big man chased after him with large strides. He roared as he chased. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Therefore, he rushed directly to Murong as soon as he got off the ship, wanting to kill Murong. However, after chasing for a while, the big man became depressed. Because the distance between him and Murong did not decrease because of this. "This little bastard is so fast. Damn it, let's see how long you can last." The big man was furious and chased after him. "Big brother, you should put me down. I don't think he'll let you go. After you put me down, you can escape alone." Gong Sun Ningyu suddenly said. "Don't worry, he can't catch up to me." Murong said confidently, "But your power is consumed. Once it's exhausted, we can't escape." Gong Sun Ningyu suddenly became anxious. "Don't worry, he can't kill me, and he can't kill you either." Murong could only say so. "Little bastard, this island is only so big. Let's see where you can run to." The big man chased after him angrily. "Big brother, you should put me down," Gong Sun Ningyu said again. However, before she could finish her sentence, her face suddenly turned pale. Because Murong really put her down. Although she repeatedly asked Murong to put her down, when Murong really put her down, she was disappointed. A strong fear suddenly filled her heart. "Stand here and don't move." Murong did not have time to look at Gong Sun Ningyu's face. He only ordered, then took a step forward and went straight to the big man. Seeing this, the big man was startled at first. Then he could not help but laugh. "Little bastard, are you here to die? I'll fulfill your wish." The big man grinned maliciously as he pounced towards Muronyu. He did not even think about why Muronyu did not escape and only rush forward. Boom! Just as he pounced on Muronyu, an incomparably huge fist had already broken through the obstruction of space and slammed on his chest. The violent power erupted in an instant, and the big man's entire chest exploded in an instant. In addition, a terrifying soul attack had already bombarded his soul space, ruthlessly bombarding his soul. With a chi, the big man's entire soul shattered, turning into billions of fragments. Muronyu's soul flame of primal chaos was even more frenzied. In less than a moment, the big man's entire soul had been annihilated, leaving nothing behind. With a bang, at the same time as the big man's soul was annihilated, Yishuin once again blasted the big man's head, directly blowing it up. The big man was killed directly. The powerhouse of the First Order Great Sage didn't even have time to react before he was killed. It was not that Muronyu was too powerful, but the other party's soul was too weak. If the other party was a high-level Great Sage, Muronyu would not be able to kill him so easily. If it was the undead realm, Muronyu would not be able to kill him at all. Even if the soul attack was powerful, it was the same. After quickly plundering the storage ring of the big man, Muronyu quickly left with Gongsun Ningyu. The reason why he wanted to lead the big man to a place where no one was before killing him was that he didn't want more people to discover his strength. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.